Dated May 4th, the applicant is proposing about a 28.75 square foot wall sign on their tenant space, unit 37, which was previously Spectrum.
I guess he said it.
There you go.
I read it days ago.
And that frontage is just under, or just a little over 59 feet. So relative to the total sign area, there's no issue there. What's allowed based on what's being proposed. The issues kind of come in with the sign itself, because the Commons have a particular sign plan that you have to follow in Macedonia Commons. So item 2 in my report, all signs shall be made of individually raised letters. The proposal is to erect letters routed out, pushed through clear plex with vinyl overlays on the faces. And then it sits on an aluminum face welded to the returns. I don't think that approach complies with the requirements to maintain individual letters, and that's something we talked through with the applicant. The side returns are shown as lime green and white, and there's no information regarding the trim cap on the plan. The Commons require bronze trim caps in returns. And then fourth item, the sign shall be 15 inches from the bottom of the fascia band. There's no information to confirm compliance with that. And then colors, rose colored lettering is being proposed, but that does require approval from the Planning Commission. And then all signs shall project 12 inches from the base of the building. The letter can shall not exceed 5 inches deep, and the raceway 7 inches. And there's no information to determine if that's complied with. And then the under canopy sign that is proposed does reflect compliance with the standard. So just need to have a revised plan that reflects compliance with the Commons criteria.
All right. Anybody else have any comments? Or I guess, do you have any thoughts on those comments?
Yeah, we have these, no plans, like that's the size of the raceway is 6 inches. And the space where the sign area is going, like we can, like if it needs to be 15 inches, we can move it up, like we just center it on the sign area.
Okay.
So we can adjust that. And as far as the trim cap and the color, as he said, like this is the franchise and this is how they want their sign to be. And we already, like gave the approval from the landlord, and we already submitted that, which is the original application. It was approved from the landlord, and here is, exactly how that sign will look. Doesn't have no trimless. Like this is the push-through letters, and they just wanted the returns to be painted lime green.
Okay, well, I guess the problem comes in is that they have, whether the landlord, says, hey, that's fine, and he's got a document that says what he agreed to, or whoever he developed the area, said things need to be, we've got to comply with that. For instance, do you have any other words on that?
Yeah, and I think that's it. The current owner purchased it. When they purchased it, they bought the criteria. I think they have been back since they purchased it and made an amendment with the Planning Commission, but it doesn't affect the issue we're talking about. We had 2021, there was a change approved by the Planning Commission, and then 2014, and actually 2020 as well. So there's been a few changes, and as it stands, what I cited are the requirements. So the commission can't approve it. Now what the owner could do is they could come to the city and request a change, and that can be evaluated, but it would have to be approved, here by the Planning Commission. So that's, unfortunately, that's the, the situation.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Go ahead.
If it was a landlord, or something other thing, and that is that approved and based on
And I see, yeah, I mean, I've got that same thing right here, and I guess, I mean, you could say it's made out of whatever, he could agree to whatever, but he's got a document that is agreed upon with the city of this is what it has to be, this is what it has to be made of, this is what the trim caps have to be, this is the dimensions things have to be. We can't go against that, because, you know, and he really can't go against it either, even though he signed his approval of the sign. He either needs to get his, yeah, so it almost doesn't matter who actually signed it. It doesn't comply with the agreement he's got with the city.
So what it needs to be done now?
So either you guys would have to comply with the comments Mr. France has, then everything can, you know, there's no changes, anything, or the landlord needs to ask for a modification to the agreement he's got with the city to specify the things that would allow what you're proposing. So right now, we can't approve something that's outside of that agreement. Yeah, we've made a couple, like Mr. France said, we've made a couple of changes to that agreement over the years. We're not necessarily opposed to doing that, but we have to have something from the landlord asking, hey, this is what I want to change it to.
Can we get something that is signed by him and we can send it to them? Sign it.
Or Mr. Thomas?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of various ways that things have. I guess if he was okay, you know, changing his plan, he could propose something to the city. It would have to be approved by this group to allow that agreement, or yeah, but then that's going to delay you guys a month. If that's if he's that's if he's on it and gets something proposed, he gets it into to Susan, and it gets on next month's agenda. Yeah, that's what I'm sure probably it hurts. Unfortunately, sure of you guys saying yes, we will comply with the comments, and we could potentially approve it subject to an administrative review that comes back and says, you know, has the items that Mr. France noted, you have the manufacturing the way that that meets the specification. It could be approved potentially administratively. Short of that, either you gotta get something from him and it's gonna be next month, and that's assuming we agree to what he's proposing. And then we'd have to, you know, talk about your sign again. I think a much quicker way would be for you to agree to do it the way that has that the specification of the agreement is now, and have it done administratively.
It's actually how all the signs in the entire plaza are looking,
Yeah.
they all have those prize returns, because that's the standard that's been set for that. We sometimes see this where people show that this is what the corporate thing is and all that, but the corporate logo doesn't supersede the city, unless there was a change on the.
We didn't know that, and they should have told us.
They should have.
And then, or we can now have our style of signage in this area, so, we'll go back from.
Yeah, he should have known that he can't just say, oh, it's okay, I'm okay with it, so it's all good. I mean, there's an agreement that's agreed to by both parties, and both sides have to agree to that, changes to that, so they can allow this. Like if Brown's returns, it's the actual. And we'll still,
Trim caps and returns have to be, they have to be channel letters. Runs, trim caps and returns, and then channel letters.
we'd still need to deal with the color, but I don't know color
I
could be
looked
an
through
issue
that.
for us.
There's
calling this rose, we could talk about that. I mean, does anybody have a problem with that color? We've got red letters, we've got blue, we got, you know.
That dimension, and I know it's not St. Pleasant, it's across the way, and it's similar color, so we already kind of had it in the city.
It's actually closer to the original, when the building was originally built, they reported it all red.
Yeah.
And so the owner, I don't know if it's this owner or the previous one, they worked with the city a lot of different colors. And
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Your own.
These colors.
Yeah, so I think the colors, I think, will be okay with.
Yeah.
I mean, the green, the caps and all that stuff, I don't know.
We're trying to do the outside, it has to be bronze, it can't be this color. The face.
Yeah, the face run on it.
will look like this.
Yeah. They could still have the white and the rose, it's the green that's really the issue, because they have brown for trim.
It has to have trim caps.
Yeah, but my interpretation, am I right that the white and the rose and the three-dimensionality to it is acceptable as well too?
Well, they need to be channel
If
letters.
it's a channel letter, it won't have it like this. No, it just has to be sort of this pink color with the white plexiglass, it'd be like you.
Well, I guess if you're willing to go back and revise your thing, and I'd put a whole, revise one of these with all the comments that he's made, the 15 inches, all the various things. I think we could I would be willing to make a motion to approve the color and the plan that complies with Mr. Francis' comments to be reviewed administratively. If you guys are okay with that. Okay, I'd like to keep you moving rather than anything else. So I guess that would be my motion to approve a revised plan that addresses Mr. Francis' comments and also to allow the rose color to be added to the approved colors and for the revised plan to be approved administratively. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Anything else from this evening? That's good. All right, all in favor? Aye. Sorry, I wish the owner
Hey,
had
Mr. Chairman,
responded back.
I do need a letter from the owner stating that he approved the sign, okay? You have the signature here, but I don't know who this person is. We just need an official letter that he's approving the sign, okay? Thank you.
Yes, some letter.
Yeah, we're gonna.
That's the one that's signed
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure, we're not sure who that
McFadden, but I don't know who she is. I mean,
Yeah, that's not the typical owner.
No.
Like, who is it?
it's Osborne. Lance Osborne. Yeah.
She might be a representative, maybe it's a
If
letter
it is,
from her that says as representative of Lance Osborne and vice versa.
Exactly.
That would probably be suitable, but yeah. That McFadden, city hasn't dealt with her, so maybe it's just probably some representative of Osborne. Perfect. So, yeah, so I'd work with, get a revised plan to the building department and hopefully get going. Sorry. Next is the signage change for Crumble. Good evening. So their Crumble wants to make some changes to their signs, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Francis, you look over your comments on this?
Sure, my report dated May 9th. So, yeah, it looks like Crumble's just doing a update maybe to their corporate branding. Their branding. They occupy a space that has 2 frontages, and looking at the total permissible area based on the 2 frontages, they're well below what's permitted, so they're sitting at just under 40 and just under 80 allowed, so no issue with the area. The signs are comprised of individual black channel letters mounted on a raceway. Just we don't know the color of the raceway, so really the only issue that I know getting the approval would be just that we do need that to know what the color of the raceway is.
I
this morning is a paint tone white to match the fascia.
Is that acceptable?
Okay.
With that, then, would recommend approval.
Okay, anybody else have any, anything?
No.
Good. You guys have any questions or?
Good.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the plan noting specifically that the raceway is going to be white. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think those white letters are all the- pretty much the- not really noticeable.
It's kind of cheaper than we came for.
Yeah. All right. Next up. Fifth Third Bank.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you.
It is sign.
So similar to lesson, looks like rebranding, replacement of all that stuff. Anything specifically before we get the comments that you wanted to note?
No,
It's okay if there isn't.
it's pretty cut and dry. It's just really sign replacements. They're not radically different, but they are different enough that we have a little bit of a challenge based on Francis' analysis.
Okay. Go ahead.
So my report dated May 8th, this is for rebranding for Fifth Third. The site being located at 2055 Alexandria Way, and located in the Alexandria Square retail development. That, similar to the Commons, has a sign criteria that has to be followed. We did amend that sign criteria in 2023, and we amended specifically the height of the signs went from a minimum of 24 inches down to 18 inches. We did not do anything with the maximum of 36 inches. So with that said, we'll talk about some of the deficiencies, and we spoke about this and just felt we should probably talk to the commission about it. Ultimately, it's a recognized challenge, just got to figure out how to overcome the challenge. So they're going to replace three wall signs. The south elevation, which is facing 82, will contain a shield logo and the bank name. In total, it represents 24.21 square feet. The east and west elevations will just have the shield logo, which is about 13.71 square feet. In total, they're just under 52 square feet. So relative to the total area, it's acceptable. They're allowed to have quite a bit more area. The issue is going to come. The issue is going to come into play with the height. So it's again capped at 36 inches, and the sign on the south elevation is sitting at 5.58 feet roughly tall, and then the logo itself is 3.5 feet. And again, it's capped at 3 feet, and that's because as it relates to the size of the building, the criteria states in the event of a major retail tenant occupies 10,000 square feet or larger, you can go up to a 48-inch height, but this building is only about 4,200 square feet roughly, so it's capped at that 36 inches. So that's really the most significant, I would say, challenge of anything that I'm reporting out tonight. And then the next comment, they have to be placed in the center of the facade sign band and have a common bottom line within the band. So I just stated once the height's revised, the applicant will just have to comply with that standard. And then the side return shall be metal with a trim cap. The applicant must confirm compliance with the metal trim cap requirement. Looks like it's supported that it is a metal trim cap. Yeah. And then the sign faces shall be red, blue, green, white, or black with the raceway color to match the background and approved by the planning commission. That was amended in 23 as well. So we have white letters with a blue, green, white logo. Those are acceptable provided approval from the planning commission. So really, it does come down to that. The overall letter height can't exceed 36 inches.
Yes, and I've actually done a little digging into this and spoke to a representative for Carnegie Management, but they don't manage branch. The third owns the building. But apparently there was some form of agreement between, I think they characterize it as a reciprocal easement and operating agreement that they have with Fifth Third regarding their signage. And I did notice that the existing signage is actually a little bit larger than the 3-foot size requirement or maximum requirement. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's possible that, you know, that, and we have to do some work with the customer to investigate this. But if there's some, you know, agreement that might, I don't know if it would supersede, it probably wouldn't, I don't know. Or if there's a way that, you know, it can be changed through the city in working with the association, because that's my understanding, it's the Alexandria Square, like business association. So, I mean, we're working, we have the contact for that, and we're working with the customer through that channel. Because this is, it's something where size-wise, we run into a problem when we shrink these things down, the visibility is radically reduced. And it just wouldn't be very effective. And I think one of the options would be to keep, if we can't get the approval on the new signage, would be to pretty much keep the existing and just do maintenance on them. The key is they want to remove those wings from the existing brand, because that would not be in line with their new branding. And actually, square footage, I know that that's not the issue, but we're actually half of what the square footage was with the wings, so. I don't know if there's a way that we could get, you had mentioned previously, but maybe possibly we can work something out where they can make a change to their requirements with the planning commission, and perhaps it could be approved administratively the next meeting or down the road. I don't know.
So help me figure, the south side
Yeah,
faces 82, that's
that's the main, and
That's
and
the one
that's
that
another
says big.
challenge too, with like, you know, putting it on the one band, is that the peaks really limit our ability to present the logo and letters like we want to globally. I mean, they want to try to maintain that same look and feel, and as much as possible, obviously, throughout their footprint. And those peaks do present a little challenge on that main sign. Put it all on one section, it's almost impossible based on, you know, to have it present large enough so that it's visible enough, and then also be in line with their corporate branding initiative. Side logos are a little bigger, but those are, you look at the scale and the size of the walls, they're not, I can't envision that being a real concern with the association. We understand they have reasons for why they don't want that.
so, but even those ones are exceeding the height?
They are.
Okay. You got 42 inch.
And it was interesting because I'm reading the memo point, I'm looking at your guys' regular code, I'm like, in that particular, obviously, that association, it would be an issue of all
Yeah.
the signage.
And
The city.
Do you remember when we revised that to allow the smaller letters, that was for a specific user we were trying to get, that wanted to do shorter letters? Remember who?
Yeah, usually I'll make notes, but it just, let me see, we did it at the 2/13/23 meeting. And it doesn't say who it was for, but it would have been applicant driven.
Yeah, right, we weren't
Yeah.
looking for anything. So I guess, I mean, the two things we can do tonight is one, we can say if you're willing to revise it, just like the ice cream guys. Doesn't really sound like you guys want to do that option. The second, I think, would be to see if you can get the owner to, you know, present to the city a change that would allow this to happen. I guess, Mr. France, if they did come back with that, would allow, it would be considerably taller, it would be 66 inches or something, maximum height, or something like that, to get the 5.5 feet or something that they're looking at. Is that good?
Yeah, because, you know, we cap the total at 48 inches for larger buildings. So you have to kind of
Seating.
plan accordingly, you know, as you look at the other buildings. I was just going to see what it's capped at. And
Box the letters and the logos separately, there's the space between the logo and the letters. It has to be included probably in
Yeah, sure, that's how
the
they.
way but when you extrapolate that out, it's definitely a little smaller, but technically it's one sign, so.
Well, I think they wanted to go with.
just to put it into some perspective, we cap it at 72 inches for major retail, major buildings in the commons. So, I mean, those are much larger buildings,
Those are big boxes.
and they're capped at 72. I mean, it feels like you could reduce it some, but
Yeah, it does, but yeah, if we've got a maximum of 36, the bigger one at 48, what was 60, is like 66 plus, maybe a little bigger. Does seem like it might be a bit much.
I think one of the things, though, we're looking at it from their perspective, the corporate perspective of uniformity throughout their footprint. I think that's a big factor, and that's why we're, trying to move it forward.
The space between the logo and the letters counts towards the overall height. I mean, I see that you're counting it just by code.
It's not always like that, but usually it's.
yeah, even the logo itself is
Yeah, it's still
above.
I don't even think I don't remember seeing anything in the city code for the height of the sign. It was just based on the frontage of the building or the square footage.
Yeah, there isn't. It's, there's multiple retail, let's call them plazas, that almost every one of them have a separate set of, sign criteria, regulations, that the owner at the time approached the city planning commission and mayor to negotiate out the parameters of what that's gonna be. Each one's slightly different. And then over time, we've amended them based on requests and what was kind of reasonable. I just pointed out, just simply, the high end in this development is 48 inches. So if you were to make a change to let's say the bottom end, the smaller buildings, to exceed the larger ones, then we've got to look at the larger ones, and then by comparison, to the large big box, so, you know, as you call it, over in the commons, they cap at 72.
Gotcha.
We really haven't had that many issues with it, a few here and there, which were resulted in the changes.
I understand.
So I guess, yeah, it sounds like you would like to go back, have the owner try to propose something. I just don't know what you guys think, you know, jumping to 66 or so might be a bit.
Well, the bank owns the building, but I think it's the association we have to work with.
Yeah, it's, the criteria is specific to the miscellaneous stores and the out parcels regardless of ownership.
Am I wrong, but shouldn't the association be aware of these things and be advising the tenants, so it doesn't waste so much time in front of us?
Typically, the developer association like to get renters that pay
Sure.
rent. And so they just sign off.
Is there like an affidavit or some type of notarized document where we require them to sign or something? Because we spend a lot of time doing this, and we're like at the end, we're like the bad guys, we're just enforcing the rules that they should be making the tenant aware of. So-
That they agreed to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think of how many
You probably do this all
branches
the
they
time.
have, I'm sure it's, you know,
What are these cases? We didn't even get a letter.
they don't really think about it, you know, like,
Someone in marketing designs a logo and comes up with the dimensions and they force it down and we're at the bottom of the hill.
we're in the middle.
Yeah, you're right in the middle. So I'm thinking we had, you know, continuing this to a future meeting, but so you can go back and talk to them. But I guess for consideration, you know, seeing if it can be reduced somewhat from what you proposed, something greater than what's allowed, but maybe something maybe not quite that's almost 68 inches tall, because then we're going to get stuck dealing with that with all the other ones that aren't a standalone, that aren't, you know, that are just all the any of the signs along through there. So we're going to be a little hesitant to go too big.
Unless the association would approve changing their rules for that particular.
Yeah, if there's a way to get creative and say, you know, for standalone buildings over a certain amount of square footage, you could go up to something, and maybe that only applies to you guys. Or, I don't know exactly how, you know, all those things are written. I've really done.
All right, that's what I was gonna,
There might be some kind of thing that would limit it to just you, but it becomes part of
If the association does it, they have to come to the city.
they would have to,
approve it.
yeah, so it can have to be both things put on.
I don't think we're gonna approve something that's almost the same size as what the big stores are either, so.
Right,
If
that's
they
what
would
I'm saying.
increase it, it would have to be still proportionate.
Yeah, so something, guess, yeah, you can always talk to the city to see if, you know, if they've got any thoughts on it, you know, after the fact, but I would say, yeah, go back to the association. And unless there's any value in saying, you know, we could also, if you want to, if you think there's any chance that they'll want to revise it to go with the 36-inch max, we could approve something that would, you know, review administratively. But, you know, they've got signage. I don't think speed is like the ice cream guys. They want to open it. It's a big deal for them. If this did it in a month, it doesn't seem like but there's not going to go on or something. So it's, yeah, so the people we can still.
we're working on several.
Yeah.
So,
So would you prefer just to have us continue to the next meeting and then you deal with the association and come back and see if we can get something approved that'll allow you to get something closer to what, you know, proposed?
whatever you feel is suitable.
We'd be open to discussing that and, yeah, looking at a revised thing, I think. Everybody, maybe not 68 inches, but something under that. It's not quite so big. And if they want to get creative and somehow can make it apply to just your building or just standalone rooms, you know, that might be a good way to we might be willing to go a bigger size if we didn't think it was going to carry out the ripple through all of
Yeah, I mean, I think
buildings.
what I'm, and we'll find this out, is what is the nature of their agreement with that association? Because it just seemed like there was some type of special agreement in place, but it's beyond me. I don't have it. I
Yeah.
don't have it.
And I feel like these associations and owners, just something don't keep the best records, you know? It's, they threw it in a file somewhere 15 years ago, 20 years ago, longer, and it's like, man, I don't know where that's at, I don't even know what it is. So, good luck with that, I guess. So, I guess with that, I make a motion to continue this to the June meeting.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, next, number 4, Mr. Rizzo, and the proposed garage addition, 9668 North Bedford. Good evening. All right, so, since you're not just a sign, you know, we'll, did you want to just give us a quick overview of what you were roughly planning?
Roughly, just adding a bay to my already 24 by 24 garage. The south side of it would be 16 wide by 40 deep.
Okay. I know Mr. French, you've got some comments for sure on this. Why don't you go ahead and go over.
Okay,
your thoughts.
my report's dated May 9th, and this is for 9668 North Bedford Road. As the applicant stated, added a 16 by 40 addition to a existing 24 by 24 detached garage. The lot is approximately 1.47 acres and zoned R1 residence district. So the code in the R1 district, you're limited on the size of a detached structure, and when you want to exceed, in this instance, 600 square feet, there's provisions for what we call larger outbuildings or larger garages. And it kind of then brings into a different section of the code as you look at the various regulations. So what I've done is gone through section 1163.02H, which are the basic regulations for detached structures, and then that tracks you down to 1163.02I, which specifically deals with larger structures and the provisions related to that. So I'll just kind of walk through those under 1163.02H. Detached accessory buildings shall be located in the rear yard and shall comply with the side and rear yard requirements for buildings specified in 1163.02D side and rear yards. And my comment to that is there's no scaled site plan provided. It appears that the intent is to locate the addition to the south side of the existing garage. And based on aerial photography, it looks like maybe there's about 28 feet from the edge of the existing garage to the side property line. So without having the benefit of a scale plan, I'm just kind of guessing on those numbers, but that's generally what it looks like. So you will need to have a site plan that scales out and shows exactly where it's going.
Can I bring up one point?
Sure.
On that I think there was a misunderstanding. It's going to be in the backyard, not the side yard.
Okay.
The addition.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I think you looked at an aerial photograph. I have a covered patio on my house that blends right into my existing roof of my house. I'm thinking you might think it's an addition, but it's not. It's just a covered patio.
Okay.
I have a picture of it on my phone.
So the garage is on the north side of the.
No, it's still on the south side, but I thought in your notes there was a problem with the building being on the side instead of behind the house. It's behind the house.
It's not going into the side yard setback, it's going in the rear.
It's in the rear.
Okay, yeah, I misunderstood.
That's my fault because I didn't figure it
Yeah, that's okay.
Kind of do it.
Yeah, so maybe some of this is,
This is a rough one.
Just looking at his rough plan real quick.
It's rough.
You're putting it back here behind.
No, here's my house.
Okay,
But this part of my house
okay,
is a covered patio,
okay.
large covered patio, and they have a deck and a pool. But I think the problem was this.
Okay.
The garage looks like it's sitting next to the house, not behind it. The back of the house is actually.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, yeah, the house right there.
And this roof structure here, this is the patio.
Yep, that's all patio. That's all covered patio. And then there's my deck, and then there's my figure. I have a side picture so that you can see it's patio.
And maybe some of it comes down to the definition of side yards and backyards and rear.
yeah, that's a side yard, yeah.
This is my existing
Okay.
thing. That's actually covered patio.
Okay.
You can see. It's large. And that's actually the back.
Okay. Okay, that's your.
From the air side, with my aerial looks like. That's what I got from
Yeah,
that. There's a problem there.
yeah, I thought it was going on the south side of the existing.
The addition is. But I thought there was a problem.
And is that going out into the side yard? Your front yard,
That would be back there.
your front yard faces,
East, yes.
and faces the road.
Back there is 271.
Yeah. And then you have a side property line, which would be from where your front property line stops, your front yard stops, you pick up the side yard, and that goes to into the back of your structure. And so you're saying that it's not gonna go into the side, closer to your south neighbor's property line?
The addition?
Yeah.
Yes.
And how close to your south neighbor's property line would it be going?
It'll be 4 feet off the property line. I'm on the schedule Wednesday for the BZA
Okay,
for a setback.
okay, so, all right, so you do need
Yes.
a variance for sure,
Right.
okay. So, yeah, that's why, again, I didn't know about the site plan exactly what, yeah.
My fault.
That's okay. So I think we just need to kind of work through some of these issues and make sure we're all on the same page. So you have a second structure on the property.
Shed.
So the code states under the basic provisions that you can only have one accessory building, and a second one's permissible, but it can't exceed 288 square feet. I don't know how big it is, but if it exceeds 288
That's,
square feet,
it's just a steel 10 by 14 shed.
so it's 140 square feet. So then, yeah, it sounds like you'd be,
It's coming down.
oh, it is? It's part of this project?
Nature. It's, yeah. Yeah, it's coming down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the area sounds like it's okay. I didn't know. So.
Right.
And then you have a maximum lot coverage, item number 4. If you see my report?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, item number 4 talks about a maximum lot coverage. I don't know if it's fine or not. You just have to tell us, give us some data about your lot coverage.
The actual size of my lot?
Yeah, so you have, all accessory buildings can't exceed 10% of the rear yard. You're probably okay, but you just need to articulate that on your plan. You can put it right on your site plan.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can't exceed 35% for all buildings and structures in the rear yard. you may or may not. It's probably okay, we just need to give us some data, yeah.
And that could be on the site plan.
Yeah, yeah, you can write it in, do the math, however you wanna do it, that's fine. And then, I'm on item 5, it's more of a building code requirement about fasteners. I just think that the building department would confirm that compliance. And then, there's a maximum height, it shall be 15 feet, or the height of the main building, whichever is less, and shall not be greater than 1 story. So I just said, it looks like you comply with that, but you need to confirm. And it looks like you comply with the roof pitch. There's a, you can't have less than a 312 roof pitch. So then getting into provisions for larger lots, 116302, it can only be in the rear yard. Any lot with a minimum of 1 acre. So I took it to be side yard. We need to make sure that it's not the side yard. If it's the rear yard, then it's acceptable. And I think you need a conditional zoning certificate. You do need a conditional zoning certificate when you exceed the 600 square feet. So one way or another, you have to come back here to the planning commission for that permit.
Okay.
Sounds like you gotta try to get your variance for your setback issue.
Right.
Then you have to come back here for a conditional zoning certificate for your larger structure.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so if it's not in the side yard, then we're okay. If it's in the side yard, you have to get a variance to allow that.
And definition for the side yard, is it as long as it doesn't encroach on the side projections of the structure of the house?
So the side yard means the yard between the main building and the side lot line extending from the front yard to the rear yard. So it extends into the rear yard, the side yard.
Into it or just up to it?
No, into it. So side yard means the yard between the main building and the side lot line and extending from the front yard to the rear yard.
And then what's a rear yard defined as?
Rear yard, the yard across the full width of the lot between the rear line of the main building and the rear lot line. The depth of the rear yard is the mean distance between those two lines. So you're always going to have a side yard is going to be all the way down the side property, because the idea is you're trying to keep structures off of the side of the property and not encroaching up to neighboring properties, too close to the property line. So, you could have a situation where you have a house that sits further back and a house that sits up closer, and the side, if you pushed a large structure close to the side yard, and there's a house that sits to the rear behind the front house, and you're in the side, the idea is you're providing more separation.
Okay. So maybe I'm not hearing it clear. It seems to me like the way you're reading the side yard, that it would be just the width of the building going, of the home from extending to the side. Not of the net. The rear yard says from the back of the building to the back of your property. So is that, so as long as it is behind his house, is that rear yard? But if it extends to the side of his house, behind the house, is that rear yard or is that part of the side yard?
If you feel as though it's, I've always interpreted it to protect the property owner to the side.
Yeah.
In this case, the south, that side yard extends the full width of the lot from the front.
I guess to be safe, is his variance gonna put all this, if he gets approved for the variances, all those issues go away, or side yard, rear yard, I guess.
Sounds like they applied for a side yard setback, so it would be cured. if that's
Okay,
granted.
yeah, got one, okay, so that, so no matter how you interpret it, it's taken care of with the variance. If that doesn't happen, you gotta rethink the whole thing.
Me too, I'm not sure.
I'll get the site plan.
I don't- I think it's
Stated to BZA.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Could you just draw where it's going, because we're confused as to
Oh,
where this
okay,
thing is
sure.
gonna go.
And I've got it. I was scribbling. So this is house, right?
Yes.
Oh, this is covered, this is a
Right.
very old picture. This is his existing garage here, this is where the new pieces go. So it's behind the house line, but it's extended, but the variance would take care of that.
It would, but if, my interpretation of that is, then if it's in the side yard, you need a variance for the fact that it's not 3 acres. Because the code distinguishes. In front or side yard, in front or side yard on lots of 3 acres or more, provide the accessory buildings a minimum of 150 feet from the street, 50 feet from the side lot line. So that's 50 feet from the neighboring to the south, in my opinion. If not, you would need a variance because it doesn't meet 3 acres.
So I hate to see him go get a variance and we say, okay, that's fine, but you're still not good, so I.
It would cure the side yard setback issue, but not the, if there was concurrence, that the way I'm interpreting that is correct, he would need a variance to allow it in the side yard. We've already accepted that there's a variance for the side yard setback, which would imply that we've accepted it's in a side yard.
Yeah,
And if that's the case, then it would need to be a 3 acre lot. If it's not, you would need a variance for the fact that it's not a 3 acre lot. I don't think that's an issue relative to the proceedings of the BZA, like meaning it wouldn't kick them into another meeting
yeah,
and push them out, because intent of the Board of Zoning Appeals provision is to notify property owners that a variance for that property is being requested, in this instance for an impact to the side yard setback. Whether it's 1.47 acres or 3 acres, it's a side yard issue is what the variance,
Yeah.
sounds like that's
so
what.
it doesn't affect the notification, it's.
I think the BZA could add it on without
Okay. that's-
without re-noticing it,
So
because the intent is there. You did apply for a side yard setback.
Yes, that's what I go for.
Yeah, so I think, in my opinion. the
Because I'm
intent's
so close to the bottom.
there. He might, I don't know.
Maybe bring up.
Yeah, with the building commissioner's point out, you might exceed the 10% requirement too. We just don't know, because we don't have, data or metrics to tell us.
Okay.
You should know that going into your meeting with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So you get all the variances out of the table, the side yard setback, the 3 acres, the lot coverage, and you have to address it all at once. Such a package. Yes, I think if I, yeah, I think I should have said, here's the house, here's your covered patio, here's your existing garage, here's the addition. Okay,
This doesn't, I didn't have the patio on there.
okay, but that's, covers this, this extension.
My understanding is, anything you got, the time this line of the house in the backyard.
The way he's interpreting it, yeah, he's saying anything to the side of this in the side yard. That's where the side yard is. For that, then, yeah, I guess if I'll get it all together. Okay. Hold on.
What if it was attached to the house?
I don't know.
Would we come in attached garage, so 6 grand?
I've seen a lot of those.
Yeah, or they do something, hodgepodge, thing, make it attached to the house, yeah.
I don't like the way it looks.
Yeah.
I don't,
Okay,
but I know I've seen it.
yeah, I thought the same thing. Yeah, it could be. So you guys support continuing to the next meeting, you should have a decision?
Yeah.
All right, motion to continue this to the June meeting. Your second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? All right, good luck. Thanks, appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, that was it, okay. Thanks. So I think it's just so the next item is Opal Link Studio. That has been requested to be withdrawn by the applicant. So I'll make a motion to withdraw that item from the agenda as requested by the applicant.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, something else for now. The next is the building addition at Blackburn, 8791 South Freeway. Yeah. Evening. Yes, I know. Don't say anything because it could change in 5 minutes. All right, so you guys have been here before and addressing some comments. Is there anything specifically to note, or do you want to jump into Mr. Francis' current review of the?
Happy to go through those comments, and we reviewed them all, we have no issue. They both and the engineer's comment, are recommending approval with staff's final review. And we're certainly.
Francis, would you like to start yours?
Sure. So my report date May 8th, and yeah, it does conclude basically approval subject to, sounds like your concerns, no issue. But for the cheap seats, I'll at least go through it.
I don't know who he's referring to.
I wasn't referring to you. So, yeah, with that scale issue, just needs to work through. It's to some scale. Just
Right. Well, yeah, without knowing what you're printing it out to, or.
I'm handed a piece of paper and I put an engineer scale on it and it doesn't scale. So whoever printed this,
Right, well, and those would be eventually turned into part of the construction drawings, so they're 24 by 36, and I think the requirements were no bigger than 11 by 17, so if I have the engineer go back and change those drawings to be to a scale at civil engineering, then he has to rework his whole set of drawings to go back.
This might be something maybe for submittals is, everybody else, Brian likes to work with paper. And that's, if it wasn't for having so much of it already, I kind of like doing it as well, this old guy back here. But maybe you need to have people, they can submit the electronics for everybody else, but one hard copy to scale, and it could be larger than 11 by 17. Because I think that's the problem.
I'd bring it in.
You're sending something that's
right?
at scale,
It's just,
and then you email it to them, and they've got limitations on what they can print to.
right,
And that's what's shrinking it down a smidge, and he's having problems.
totally understand.
yeah, I mean, the only way you can evaluate, distances is to have it put into a scale. So if you're doing the 24 by 36, and I figured you were doing a different size, and at Weber's rates, you don't want to pay it again, I get it. So, a 24 by 36 plan is perfectly fine if when you, in the future, when you submit.
Sure.
That's fine by me, I have a big enough.
I'll start asking for me a one copy. I think what scares people is when you got to send in, 27 copies of giant plans.
If I need to bring in 27 copies,
We know you will.
36 to get approved, I would bring.
But the rest of us don't. The rest of us don't, yeah.
A minor markup, that's all.
Sure, and same thing with the photometric plan. I mean, you can't read those things in a smaller size, and
Yeah.
it'll be like ants in the paper, so.
Yeah.
Totally
And
understand.
As I get older, I can't see that stuff. Okay, so that's fine, whatever. You'll have a final set of plans.
Yes.
If they're 24 by 36, it's perfectly fine. You could submit that. So it sounds like you're seeking a variance for parking?
Correct, and we're on the agenda for Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
because we knew we were gonna be here, it didn't make sense to get that approval last month. We were busy working on the final plan drawings to get in for that, so.
Yeah, so that's fine, the commission, if they find it acceptable, you approve it subject to. I just had sheet C-102, doesn't provide all the details. Off-street parking is not shown on this sheet, but is depicted on LS 100, so we just need to
Get that coordinated.
correspond, yeah. Yep. And then just go through 113705, C1 through 13, just make sure you have all those boxes checked for your final plan. Then you provided some Norway spruces to shield the parking on the north side. I felt that was an acceptable approach. Just need to show like your plan, yeah, your planning details, your spacing, standards. So. And it sounds like with regard number 5, the rooftop equipment, it's all being placed down. My only comment to that is if there's mechanicals on the ground that are visible, we want to see them screen the landscaping.
Yeah, it'd probably be a small condensing unit.
Yeah, that's our landscape. Okay, no problem. So yeah, we already talked about the photometrics, just so, it sounds like it's probably fine, it's just a legible set. The other thing we talked about the last time, dumpster enclosure, it sounds like that's now going inside, and so that's an acceptable solution. I'm assuming you just roll it out or open a door for garbage day. Yeah. And then finally, just stormwater management, those details need to be confirmed by the city engineer. So that's, I'd recommend approval subject to the minor comments in here and then the board of zoning appeals approval.
Okay. July.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Okay, so your guys' plan shows a detention pond in the back yard, and that's great. Please make sure you submit the calculations for that detention pond. We did get the draft version of your long-term inspection and maintenance agreement, so we'll review that, make sure it's correct, and then both parties can sign. But we do need the calculations for the storm sewer system and the detention pond. Those did not get submitted yet. So, truck maneuver diagram, I did not see it anywhere on the civil drawings, and that's okay. You can just follow up, either submit it later or let us know what sheet it's on, but I didn't see it, so that should not be too big of a deal. And then, I mean, otherwise, provided that you receive approval here tonight, we can move forward and perform the final administrative review on the entire set of plans. I usually don't like to do that until you get through this body, just in case some changes come out of this meeting. So, but otherwise, Chairman, I'm comfortable with the approval tonight.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and, I mean, previous meetings, the proposal was they were going to sprinkler an alarm, and then that's acceptable.
All right. Good. Good. Yeah, you're good. You're good. All right, you guys got any questions?
Do we get any comments from Pam? I noticed Brian's comment about it, and I did not see anything from her on this.
I think we have in the past.
There was some first time.
Yeah.
We made a couple adjustments to that front wall, and changed some siding colors on the sidewall, just to give the building a little bit of, a little pizzazz, and then recognizing really that it's an addition that's, in my letter, it's so far back from the road, and it sits lower, people are gonna look over this addition if they're not really looking for it, if they are not watching where they're driving. And the Norway spruces will be in front now. Right. I think the only recommendation that I would have is just that front west elevation that you are gonna see. Maybe use the same color, like you use a light colored metal siding on the side there, I noticed. I think that's what it said was within it. Light gray. Maybe just use light gray up there too, so that it kind of almost mimics that concrete panel. I know it's pushed back a little bit, but then, again, the two of them, I don't have a problem with metal, but I think you just make that gray, it won't stand out, because I think that dark bronze is really, because that color of dark bronze, and it's going to pop a lot. But I feel like this, being a light gray, that being light gray, just kind of looks blend in.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I appreciate that. You know, and, we have to do that.
Okay.
I think you're okay with that, right?
Yeah, should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want the building to.
No, I mean,
Inside of
I think
on the roof.
it makes it continuous. I have no issue with material or anything like that.
So steel, but just.
Just
Yeah.
use the light gray so that it can, because you've
Kind
got,
of carries that.
you've got that like,
border
like,
around.
yeah, you've got that concrete panel, and
Yeah.
obviously doing a concrete panel up there is not
Thank you.
cost effective. The only other other material that popped in my mind was like a cementitious material up top there that would look more like a panel of concrete, but.
Yeah, it gets into a whole.
It does, and
backing
that's what,
yeah.
yeah, no, I'm good with it, that's why I said that's the only, I think that match, that makes the most sense, or at least it appears.
Mhm. Okay, so,
Otherwise, I have nothing else.
Okay. so that, the BZA variance, and addressing the comments in the memos. So the other things I think we could point out. Does anyone need anything else? Does anyone make a motion?
You're doing a good job today, Kevin.
Make a motion to approve the plans contingent on the receiving the parking variance from the BZA, as well as addressing any of the comments in the review letters from the engineering planner, and to change the color of
The metal panel on the west elevation.
the panel across the elevation. Get that?
On west elevation?
Yeah. Yes.
The light gray. And that's all. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks.
Thank you,
Took a
guys.
while.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you very much. Thank you. Good catch. Yeah, no problem.
Next item is Space Place on South Freeway. I guess, I don't know if you want to give any kind of overview of what's being proposed and then we'll do the comments.
Sure, this is about the outdoor storage at Space Place at 9165 South Freeway Drive. We were here back before the planning commission a little over a year ago, February 12th, for the exact same plan. We were proposing outdoor storage at the time, so that was, the board granted approval subject to a few conditions, documentation on the easement, approval on setback variance from the BZA, and subject to administrative review of the screening along frontage. After that, we appeared at the BZA on April 17th, 2024. They approved the variance as well as stipulation of going back to planning commission for the screening, so that was kind of contradictory a little bit. There was also talk about needing a variance for paving at the time, but we had agreed to put asphalt paving down and concrete curbing, so no variance was required for that. Since that time, we were able to get a letter from the power company approving this use of the electric easement. And so we're here tonight just to get final sign off on the site plan and screening and discuss that with the board tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. France, go over your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'll apologize, I did, after going back, I see the shrub list down at the bottom there. So I have looked that over and would definitely recommend having more landscape materials added to that. It's pretty sparse in terms of what's being proposed. Some low-lying euonymus, which don't get real tall, and a few spireas. So I think that, some things like western red cedars and some arborvitae, some combination of,
Juniper or something.
yeah, some combination of a denser screening for that area is more appropriate.
Yeah, we were just mirroring what was along the rest of the frontage, so
We have some trees on the frontage, don't we?
There's trees along the front of the building, correct? We can't put trees in the easement itself, it's in the language of the easement. They'll come and come down.
So no.
That limits, definitely limits the ability to screen it, which is a requirement of the city.
Yeah, I'm not saying that a 6 foot high something would get cut down, but I mean, it's worded that you can't plant trees in it, so. You know, we'll use some arborvitae's, glue up some of these, that would provide probably more screening than lower bushes would. I would just be hesitant to promise you that we're gonna put trees in and then come in and cut them down next year.
It's just where you have that transmission line
Well, it's the
goes right
whole-
over your building.
Yeah, it's the whole easement.
Okay.
Some technical arborvitae, something like that, to get 6 feet tall. That would probably be good. But
Yeah. And that's, of course, you gotta be careful on the sight lines at the intersection, but.
And those will eventually exceed 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
And so will they be removed? And does that defeat the purpose of the screening? You have that language with you?
I don't know if I have it.
It's attached in the, it said, I went down and read it, it says no vegetation. What is that? No vegetation within the transmission right of way being approved by this consent agreement. Any vegetation proposed to be planted within the transmission right of way must have written approved by the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company. Transmission vegetation management department.
So they do allow it, you just have to get approval.
But I believe there was verbiage in the original easement document itself, not this consent agreement, but in the original easement document, it says no trees.
I've seen them come cut it down before.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
So that's just this area right here.
yeah, that would just be from here to here. The easement is this dashed line all the way to the property line.
And where are you proposing?
This is the outdoor storage out here in the hatch.
Can you show me where the easement is? I
Yeah, sure.
apologize.
The easement goes from here to here. So it's this whole area.
Let's see if you could at least get something on the corner of the building there or something.
Well, it's not a building, it's just a parking lot.
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the corner of the space.
Maybe it's ridiculous, okay, is that what we determined?
I don't know, I heard no vegetation and then.
Well, we just have to approve it.
It has to be approved. Is what this agreement that was dated the 26th of April in 2024 is what that says. Actually, it was accepted on 3/25/2025.
Maybe just do something. Or tornado grasses or something. Maybe soften it a
BZA,
little.
BZA approved this based on having vegetation.
They approved it, correct me if my terminology, they approved it subject to coming back to planning commission for your review of the screening. Your board originally approved it, subject to staff approving the screening, so.
So, and we didn't have this sort of agreement at the time, which we had said there needed to be screening. We didn't have the agreement. Now the agreement says you can't have vegetation, or you can, but you have to get approval.
Well, at the time, we had the easement document that said no trees, but it didn't say no screening. This happened after the planning commission.
So I think part of the issue is we really ideally want this to be heavily screened because we're concerned about the storage of stuff back there. You know, I don't know if there's a real good, there's pictures and stuff attached of what, hey, this is what we're thinking will not be, here's what will be, but it's not, still not real well defined.
Yeah.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Where are those photos of those vehicles? Those photos are of the sister facility, moving farther south off Freeway Drive. And that's in Macedonia? Those are current vehicles that are stored in other outdoor storage area at Bristol Space Place. So this is just notifying or just noting what will be allowed to be stored here. Mr. Commissioner, I have a question. Are the vehicles that are being stored at this other location allowed to be in that kind of condition?
Well, to be honest with you, we have all kinds of problems with what's being stored there. Okay, we're in the process now of getting that area cleaned up because there is unlicensed vehicles, there is junk vehicles parked there, and I'm working currently with the owner to get that cleaned up. Originally, the agreement allowed them to store recreation vehicles, and from that, it just kind of avalanched to anything and everything possible. I was denied access to the property. They didn't want me to go there, so I went to the neighbor's yard and I took some pictures, and I presented them with the pictures, and now they're in the process of cleaning it up.
I mean, for that reason right there, I don't.
So this is why I would really like to know what's being stored here, because if we're gonna have the same thing that's at the old location,
That's why I'm asking, because. Well, that's why the owner agreed with the photos that were submitted with the application. That's what he's noted. Will be allowed to store here, that can be a condition of the approval. But you also don't have screening, which we approved the last time as part of your approval, as part of your approval.
Are they gonna follow?
Yeah. Especially if now the language, we would be approving it. They could put it in, but then the legal company could come cut it down. Then we approve something that's we no longer have control over screening from. Isn't that the same condition though when we approved it last time? When we, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would have to tell them they could no longer have storage there, correct? If they put up the screen that we're requiring, the limiting company came and cut all of it down and said you're not allowed to have it, does the city then have the right to revoke that outdoor storage license to allow them to have that? Or is that gonna then just become a battle for the city to fight?
well, I think what you have in front of you now, the ordinance is very clear that they are to provide screening from that. If they can't provide a screening, then this board is gonna have to make a decision.
Excuse me, it sounds like we would have to get notification from the power company.
I would agree.
Our money is there.
My concern is that it becomes a battle for the city to keep chasing people down to get it screened, if it's allowed to be.
I believe the issue is that the board already approved it, subject to staff approving screenings. We're kind of stuck in this middle ground. Maybe the right way to move forward is, just my thought is, tell me what screening you want, make that, and it'll be up to us to go get the power company to approve that. And I don't know how else, we need some direction to go to the power company with this, with the city.
May I ask a question, Mr.
Can't
King?
go to the power company.
Please.
What, you went to the Board of Zoning Appeals April 17th of 2024. What took you so long to come back here to the Planning Commission to fulfill their stipulation that the Planning Commission approve the screening?
It takes forever to get the power company to reply. So that was many months. And then we've been working through this design resubmittal for the last, 2 months probably.
Yeah.
I got involved about 2
The reason I ask that is because the way the code is written, with regard to action of the Board of Zoning Appeals, you have 12 months, the owner has 12 months following the date of the approval, which was April 17th of '24, so 12 months from then to submit an application for a zoning permit or conditional use permit or other action that complies with the Board of Appeals decision. And you're outside that 1 year with this application. That's not great news. That's why I'm asking what took so long, because technically the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals is invalidated at this point. It's beyond the 1 year, slightly beyond, but beyond.
I don't have anything to add to that, other than it just takes that long to get a power company to reply to you.
Yeah, and I believe that I worked with them, yes, they take time.
Honestly, I'm shocked we got a letter at all. Take
Yeah.
a response and then negotiate a consent agreement, it just takes forever.
I don't see how we can take action, it's not valid anymore.
It goes on the state, if the action is not taken by the appropriate party within the specified time period, the authorization of appeal shall be void and reapplication of the Board of Zoning Appeals is necessary. I was worried about the final site plan approval. Fortunately, that you have a longer time to work with as it relates to the final plan approval of the planning commission. You have more time to work with, but not the BZA.
And
They typically run between 6 months and a year.
and even the application, I was just checking to see what date the application was
Mhm.
actually made, because.
It's a week
they
out.
had- Yeah, so it missed it by a week.
Well, we spent a month going back and forth because, again, your original approval said staff had to approve it, so we were going back and forth trying to get confirmation. Does staff approve it, or do we have to go back to planning? Which in my thought, you had already made your decision on the same item, so there was a couple weeks of back and forth there.
Yeah, the Board of Zoning Appeals supersedes this body as it relates to requests for variances. So they can add whatever reasonable stipulation or safeguard to protect the interest of the city onto their approval. If these guys said, we want 3-foot tall bushes, and the BZA said, no, based on this testimony, we want 10-foot tall, we believe blank, 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 it's not gonna be 3 feet, it's gonna be 10 feet. They supersede this commission in the instance of a variance.
So it sounds like they wanted more eyes on it than just an administrative review.
They specifically, I watched that video, you know, start to finish, they specifically asked you guys you being a commission, guys and ladies, to be the approving body of that document.
So I think your suggestion, ignoring that issue of us telling you what we want and you go to try to get, I think that's where we were probably hoping to go. This issue, I don't know if it's not really, it doesn't sound like it's something we can just flatly ignore when it's a shall. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can't ignore it, it's an expired variance.
Okay, so-
But
Yeah.
I think that what you could do is give direction. It's entirely up to you. You could at least give them a direction of what the expectation is. Because if it goes back to the board,
Yeah.
the board's likely going to say, okay, we approve it the same way we did last time, go to the planning commission. So you can kind of cut some of that runaround out by giving the direction. That's, I think, fair to do.
Yeah.
It just seems very difficult at best to go talk to the power company and ask for kind of an open-ended approval. That if I go there and tell them what the board will approve, then we either get their approval or we don't. That's all I can offer.
Do you suspect they'd be okay with some mounding with maybe some taller shrubs on top?
You know, I would be guessing, and I wouldn't want to do that to the board.
Yeah.
I wasn't a part of those negotiations between the lawyers. I'm the civil engineer.
I was just
I wouldn't wanna, it seems like it's like an emergency access type thing, is what I'm guessing, that's why they don't want trees, because, I mean, shrubs and stuff like this, they're gonna take one of their big trucks, they're plowing through it. If it's a tree, they can't get over it, if it's a mound, they can't get over it, so I'm guessing they probably that wouldn't fly.
Yes, too, but that's not formal.
Yeah.
They don't want trees to grow up into the lines, of course,
Right.
but there's fences and everything else crossing these fences. I don't believe it's necessarily about driving a truck down right away. I think it's more about vegetation growing, so to impact the wires. But again, that's just mine. Yeah.
You know, I would say there's difficulty on the property, given the easement. The property has challenges. The city has requirements to screen these outdoor storage areas. This one being, you know, pretty visible right up near the road. There may be others where there's some flexibility where the storage areas are off in the back or whatever. And they have some latitude to work with, but when it's right out on the road, the city has requirements. The easement's restrictive, and so the property's rendered a little less usable for, like in this instance, outdoor storage.
If I could take a second and read through that consent agreement, if you would, a solid fence, is there any other option maybe? Any grade changes, so that kind of does away with the mound. Equipment, show out there. Parking lot, yeah. They're solid. I mean, I don't see anything ruling out fencing, so what a solid fence, be more palatable than small shrubs
Or a combination.
below.
Yeah, maybe a combination and not necessarily a solid, but maybe more of a board on board fencing.
Would feel appropriate with, I mean, maybe that's a middle ground.
May still have to get approved though, because it says no vegetation within the transmission right of way is being approved by this consent agreement. Any vegetation proposed to be planted within the transmission right of way must have prior written approval of the Cleveland Electric Limited Company. Do you know they have the
I just
vegetation
suggest that you
management?
make that a condition of the approval, then, and that we have to get that approval, or else.
So you need our back.
I
You really
need
our
something
back.
I need a hammer to go
Just wish
talk
we
about
understood
it.
more.
I
what-
don't disagree with that. I think that doing something like that, I guess where I have the bigger problem right now though is they've already been granted outdoor storage for another facility and they have not complied or kept that up there. I'm of the opinion that until that gets cleaned up and it satisfies the city's conditions, that we should not allow, we shouldn't make any further motions on this property until they can prove that they can follow and comply with what the city's requirements are. I mean, why would we give them another outdoor storage facility when they haven't followed the rules and regulations of the current one they have?
I agree, but can we?
We can just table it.
Because I really don't like that there's another facility, and they wouldn't even let them access.
Well, and these photos show that they don't comply. I mean, so they
It's ironic
they
that we
provided
use
us,
our own photos.
they provided their own
But these are,
photos.
we'll put them on our other property, a few addresses down.
That's why it's what this was.
I understood, he is starting to clean up the property, I mean, that was noted, so.
I think if he knew we were gonna be in front of us, he'd make sure we cleaned up weeks ago.
It's probably got.
I mean, my 16-year-old takes
The expectation of property owners is that they do it voluntarily, and the city doesn't have to exhaust its resources to make property owners comply. In the instance of being rejected access and then having to creep around in the bushes at a neighboring property doesn't speak volumes to a property owner who wants to work with a municipality. I think that's,
I'm not going to dispute that.
yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah, that's not your spot. I agree.
I'm of the opinion this either gets tabled or rejected. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't want to reject it, but I feel that they need to prove that they can comply and not make the city city go out of its way to,
I guess, a couple things. So before you mentioned that, I was gonna ask, do you know if the power company, if they're anticipating you coming to them with a landscape plan, knowing that that's what the BZA approval, do you know if they're,
I don't know that for a fact, but I doubt.
okay,
I doubt that they're expecting us to research.
okay.
Right, it's open-ended that we can submit.
Right, I just wasn't sure if when, all that happened, if it was like, here's the agreement,
It's not
and we're gonna be coming to you, okay.
so I guess that goes back to then open up another question though, that the owner knew that they had to have vegetation in front of some sort. The agreement was written that there is not allowed to be vegetation. That should have been a point where the owner said, I need to have some allowable vegetation here.
Well, screening is required, so screening is fenced to get things. I think it's kind of part for the horse.
But they had a year to do this. I mean, there was a year you said that they had to work with, that they were trying to get in touch with the power company.
I guess here's the thought, if we could give some, if we had some kind of guidance, if it was combination of fence and some landscaping, but knowing that they still have to go back to the BZA because their time is expired, so we could put a contingent on that, as well as, the issues on the existing site being resolved before they're allowed to start doing additional, outdoor storage, would that be acceptable? If you guys were saying, if we could make, if we made a motion that said, gave them direction, whether it's a certain landscaping or it's a fence combined with landscaping with additional contingencies that they've got to go back to BZA to get this reissued, if they'll still agree to it. And secondly, they deal with the issues on the existing site down the street to the city's satisfaction.
I think it's difficult to tie the one down the street.
Okay.
But what I think is a measure of performance, we have a property owned by this owner in the city that is substandard. I think it's fair to say that the property owner is not a good steward of that property. And that owner is making application tonight. And based on that lack of stewardship of that property, you as a commission want to be very mindful of what's being stored on the property, where it's being stored, how it's being stored. Does it have to be, vehicles have to be stacked in in line, meaning you have to have spaces marked out on the gravel where they have to park in, and they have to stay within those spaces. And those spaces 5 feet apart, and they can't be cockeyed or crooked, and they have to be straight. Those are all reasonable things that you could require for performance on this property, particularly given that the existing conditions of the same ownership on a different site have been substandard.
What about requiring that they provide registration for all vehicles that are stored on the site?
Sure, you could just simply
Current
say that
registration.
they can't be unregistered vehicles.
In working order.
So I wonder if it's something it sounds like you're looking for is some kind of direction so you could put something on a plan and start working on the power company.
In my mind, that's the biggest hurdle.
That's gonna take some time. You'll definitely still have to go back to BZA, but that could be occurring while you're sitting around waiting for the power company to respond to it. And you don't know what to put in front of them without us giving you some direction. I'm almost thinking we kind of try to come to some consensus of what we think will be recommended when it is approved. Maybe we're not approving it, maybe we basically table it, continue it to another meeting.
Yeah, I don't have a problem giving direction, but I don't think there should be any kind of approval or conditional.
And that's, I understand, yeah, so I mean, I don't have a problem with that, so I understand everything. And in the meantime, does the city need to try to come up with, I don't know that we would think on the fly right here, all the restrictions of this listing, like straight lines, spacing between the vehicles, registered vehicles, there's lots of things that somebody maybe could help us work up a list of things that would be in an approval ultimately, but not necessarily necessarily give him any approval tonight, but give him some direction so that he can start working on the power company. And they can continue to still work on the site down the street. Comes back with BZA approval, hopefully some kind of response from them so you know if what we're asking for can be approved. And then we've got some other restrictions with the help of the city to come up with this list when it does return. Does it kind of get you what you need?
I understand where you're coming from. What I'm worried about is if I don't have something definitive, then it's just gonna be up for negotiation with our.
Well,
That's my
we can
concern.
give you guidance and direction, but I'm personally not voting for any kind of an approval or a conditional approval tonight. I don't feel that I feel there's too many variables and too many open-ended items to this that then leaves us open to not doing what's right for the city. So if you're looking for either an approval or a denial,
I'm not. There's no ultimatum here. I'm saying what it's gonna take to start those negotiations.
I'm feeling we're probably gonna end up, kicking this out. I don't think we'll get any, continued approval. It sounds like you're feeling that way. I'm starting to lean that way. I think the other members are probably feeling similar, but, could we give some kind of positive, okay, when this does come back and if other conditions are all met, we will not be satisfied unless we see X, Y, and Z in the landscape, which is gonna include a board-on-board fence across, the entire area right there, and, significant landscaping, I don't know if we need to list any kind of items. Mr. Raines, if you have any suggestions, or Chris, if you have any suggestions of things that we could say to go along with that. It's not part of a motion. I don't think we have any reason to change those recommendations when you come back, but try to give some strong direction. We're not gonna, there's no chance of approval if it doesn't at least meet this minimum requirements.
I don't mean to kick it to Chris, but I think she can provide the best guidance out of any of us in terms of landscaping, like,
Yeah, I
she knows
mean,
what she knows best about the plants, trees, and she knows what we've looked at and been in favor of as a commission before, so I would, Chris, not to put you on the spot, but I feel you're most
But it
educated
does
to
sound like
provide that kind of
The
direction.
maximum height is, controlling the height is probably what the power company's issue is.
I think my thing there would be then is that there cannot be any vehicles stored there that are any higher than what's allowed from a vegetation standpoint. I think that's
Does it go down in that area?
Yeah, a little bit.
what's that?
It's going down.
The storage lot is lower than the road, but yes,
Not much.
3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, just,
Out on the street, the weeds there almost provide the screen of the weeds, it's just making
Yeah.
people stay there.
right, and there may not even be there right now,
the
So the height,
framework is
yeah,
a
we-
good 5 feet there, so it's already pretty well screened, it's just not very attractive.
And it's not.
And then maybe they'll come and cut it down, it's not supposed to be there. Yeah, and I think just, giving you that guidance at least gets it documented into our minutes, and then you have that to lean on when you go
That's fine, yeah.
in front of them and say, well, this is what they're asking for, I didn't approve, because, and you can at least start working that, and I know they're gonna take forever to get back to you. In the meantime, then we can kind of hammer out these other issues. But from a landscape standpoint, I'm still thinking this, a board-on-board or shadow box fence with taller ornamental grasses. The reason being that they're very, if they did come and cut them down, they do get cut down once they do come back. Or if they had to be kind of cut down to provide access, they could come back. They're pretty durable, but they'll also offer a good amount of screening and then some additional low shrubs or something similar to what you already have in front of the buildings on the other side of the driveway.
does that sound like anything the city would support if there's a fence along with that kind of landscape.
Problem is, I don't know that they would want a fence there because they gotta go, you know, around with the vehicles and they may knock the fence down and then who's gonna put it back up?
Well, there's a fence there now, so I guess I would think that
You think that they
chain link fence would be
okay.
replaced.
Think they
with
could get that
solid
approved?
fence.
Okay.
I don't know, but that would have to be our request.
By the way, I wanna thank you for being involved in this. You've been, like I said, really.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you.
Frustrations against you.
I understand.
Tell your client to watch the video and the posts online, so they understand our concerns.
Of course, the other issue then remains is the long-term compliance. Once you appropriately screen it, it's appropriately screened.
That's probably my biggest concern, is that they were given approval once before for a facility with the same, some
There's some
form.
track record concerns.
That's my concern, is that what we're gonna end up with in 5 years down the road.
Yeah, and this isn't a conditional zoning certificate, so I was thinking through, you know, do we want to put a annual inspection by the building department? Not that they want more work, but an annual inspection that gives them the right to go in and ensure compliance for a certain number of years. It's not gonna get you permanent, but
You said this is a conditional approval?
it's not.
It's not, okay.
That's a permitted right, provided it's screened with abundant landscaping, extensive berming screens. Those are textile language, so.
Offer that as an additional condition,
You mean,
the inspections, your own inspections,
yeah, I mean, that's, I think,
if that would make.
It's what-
providing a
it was-
safeguard.
it was
That
brought
makes
up
staff feel,
even
staff, the commission
before
feel more
The other
comfortable.
one was approved.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's some sort of limited period if they have that interest level. Or city, we also would be party to that, because they'd be the ones doing the inspection.
It was allowed just the RVs, it is specifically said not to turn it into a junkyard. And here we are, it's
Yeah.
exactly what he wasn't supposed to do, that's what he did.
So, yeah, and I don't know that, like, you know, your concern is like, should we even be approving it? I mean, ignoring the fact that the BZA thing has expired, they've kind of put that in place. It's our responsibility to get it properly screened, not to make the decision on should it be allowed. I think we're allowed to probably throw some conditions and some extra requirements on it, but I don't know that we're allowed to make that decision on whether we think outdoor storage should be allowed or not. They got the BZA approval, ignoring the fact that it expired. You know, they'll probably go back. I don't know if that, you know, their decision will change from what it was a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a right that's permitted in the district, with extensive, abundant
Yeah.
screening. If extensive, abundant screening can be provided, the commission could deny it based on that it can't be applied in this instance. And then, if that's the case, then the applicant would have to seek a use variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So I think that's the abundant, or what we think is an adequate screening, which is, you know, what we've been talking about. That's what you need to go put on a plan, take the First Energy and get them to buy off on it. They're like, no way, I'm not letting you do anything. Okay, then that's gonna kind of kill it. The requirement is to have the screening, and they won't let you have your screening. You're not gonna agree to anything. That might be the thing that kills it, but.
Yeah, I guess maybe the path forward, give me some recommendations, I take it to First Energy, if they say absolutely not, you do nothing, then we come back here and you make a decision, yea or nay.
Right.
If they say yes, we can live with the fence and shrubs and whatever, fantastic, you make your decision after that, at least I'll have
Yeah.
some direction from them at that point.
Yeah, I guess as long as you're relayed back to Space West, here's the other things you're gonna have to worry, they're saying you gotta get the other site cleaned up. You also gotta go back to BZA, you know, those are things.
Yeah, the BZA was just for a setback variance, it had really nothing to do with,
Oh,
Yeah, I was wondering, that's what I thought, I couldn't remember, because It's got, it's
It has
across
nothing to do with the
from
landscaping, it's,
residential.
you're saying it's part of.
It has to do with the definition of street,
That's what I thought.
and so contingent on that definition, they gave a variance to allow it to be within that setback, but with screening.
Okay.
So it's like
It was
part and parcel with one another.
Okay.
it was a variance to have outdoor storage 100 foot from a property line. That was the technical variance that was granted.
Yeah, subject to screening.
Correct.
Yeah, so I would agree with you. So they varied the code to allow a reduced setback for outdoor storage based on a definition of street, which requires 300 feet.
Correct.
And a stipulation of performance standard of that variance was to get planning commission approval for screening. This commission is struggling with the type of screening, what's abundant, what isn't. And it's reasonable to continue the matter and give the applicant, if this comes back with a 6 foot tall, an 8 foot, whatever the height is, board on board fence with shrubs, combination, we would accept this along with blank. And along with blank would be, I'd recommend that it be striped. That's an easy thing. Striped in the storage of whatever you allow has to be within those striped guidelines. That way, that sort of limits the haphazard nature of what you see on the other site that's not being performed.
Yeah, part of it, yeah. So those things we'll bring up at the next, if it comes back. But
Yeah.
tonight we give them the best guidance we can, along with the continuation to bring back.
Yeah,
If we have a defined number of parking spaces, can we do that for outdoor storage as well too? Like a defined number of vehicles with parking spaces as well, or not really?
so you're allowed, the outdoor storage is a right in this district. It's just a right with a setback. And they got a variance for the setback and tied it to a screening performance of the commission. I don't think you can then turn around and say, we can only have 22 spaces. But what you could say is, it can't be unlicensed vehicles, because there's other code sections that applies to. And then you can say it has to be striped and it has to be neat and organized within the striping. Those are things I think you can do.
How did this get so detailed in terms of maybe, I'm guessing the code changed where they were not allowed to have outdoor storage before, and then this was a conditional approval, is that how this worked?
Probably, yeah.
It doesn't really say
This
like,
one, what, 19, what?
yeah, it doesn't get into
40
too
years
much
old.
detail other than the fact that,
There's maybe,
what is that?
86.
86.
Oh, I was just born.
yeah. I guess he's not up there.
Because I mean,
So I guess, I think you've got the gist of our feelings, but I think there's gonna be definitely some things that are gonna have to, we're gonna be sticklers on some items when if it gets approved. I think the guidance that we'd like to give is, board on board fence with landscaping similar to what Ms. Meske described.
Mix of ornamental grasses and upright shrubs.
And so if you could put, Susan, if we could actually get that in the minutes, so he's got something written.
So you want a board-on-board fence?
how high?
Or an opaque, just say, should we just say an opaque fence?
I don't know, we only really allow, or what, the kind of fences that we,
I would be specific and say
Okay.
board on board, because opaque, you might get
Just
a,
come in with the slats through the chain link?
yeah, I'd just be very
Yeah,
specific.
okay.
If you want wood, if you want vinyl,
Do we have a height?
Yeah.
If
It's not-
there's a height requirement from the power company, right?
the height is probably as described, it's more concerned about putting pin oaks under there and tall growing.
So just tell me what you want, you
Right,
want
yeah,
6
right.
foot, that's what we'll try to go get.
Can we do 6 foot fences?
Yeah,
That's
you
the
know,
other thing.
see whatever code would allow.
Yeah.
That's
See
why,
that
that's
in
why I
here.
brought it up, because I don't wanna say a height and then we find out later that that height's not allowed.
Um, Yeah, you don't, have to worry about 6 feet. If 6 feet is acceptable. Doesn't, I don't see a number attached to the, readily see a number attached in the. Yeah, that's interesting, okay. Then, that's barbed wire.
That'll keep the
Yes,
trees
you
out.
keep your tax before you decide what height of screen you need. First you need to know what is you storing there. And if it's, you know, having those really tall RVs, you're not gonna screen them with a 3 foot.
That's why I asked him to put a height restriction on what we stored there, 'cause-
And they're showing Class C campers. Those are, I don't know how tall those are, they're not
Taller
6
than
feet.
6
tall.
feet.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking lot is below the road, but I understand your concern.
Yeah, they're
I
showing,
mean, we would agree with whatever the city code would allow to be stored in outdoor storage areas. I mean, that, there's requirements, I'm sure, attached to that. We would ask for anything in addition to that.
well, I think the issue is the height, right? So they're showing like, bucket trucks and, like I said, Class C campers, Class B. Those are pretty tall. So I don't think a 6 foot fence can screen that.
Do you know if there's anything you can recall from the code, I know you're, so you're kind of looking for the limited things, anything to a certain height? You know, if we did 8 foot, it sounds like you're saying, whatever you're gonna want, just tell you, we'll put it in the plan, within
I
reason.
don't want it to come
within
across
reason-
that way.
Within reason.
No,
We
we
want
get
some,
it.
we want some direction, so
Makes
if we
sense.
do spend 6 months trying to get the power
Yeah.
company to agree this, we come back.
And we're like, 2 more
Oh
feet.
yeah, by the way,
Yeah.
you can't have this,
Yeah.
we understand.
Brain damage.
Yeah, why don't you just say the city's considering up to 10 feet tall? Up to. I don't think you're gonna go taller than that.
I don't think
Wow, that
For the fence or?
That would
be.
for the
would
fence.
be big.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting you
Yeah.
do 10 feet, but if you're looking for direction and he needs to go to the power company, it's not gonna exceed 10 feet.
I'm thinking where it's located and, you know, driver's position and things set back off the road somewhat. To me, in my mind, a little taller than a 6 foot fence, but 10 might be a little bit like, almost look odd itself, that's.
It kind of goes against what we're trying to do. It's not just screen it, but.
Look decent.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't want something that's crazy, you know, whereas 8 foot, you could probably get some shrubs and grasses that are gonna go 2/3 of the way up that, half to 2/3 of the way up an 8 foot fence. So that's kind of leaning towards maybe an 8, so it's just not this massive wall.
I just gave a number, 8 feet, you could say up to 8 feet with a
Brian's
combination.
demanding
of
10
some
feet, I
plants.
know, he's demanding 10, but I,
Yeah, of all people, Adam.
I don't know what you guys say about, you know, recommending a, 8 foot board on board fence is what we're thinking right now, or with the shrub, the landscaping as described.
She said mixed ornamental, what?
Ornamental, taller ornamental grasses,
Taller ornamental grasses.
this campus, or maiden, just say maiden grass,
Maiden grass?
maiden,
Maiden?
MAIDEN, grass.
Maiden.
Jason's like,
Okay.
That'll get you there.
And you want
Tall
mixed,
enough.
with mixed shrubs?
With, yeah, with a mix of lower shrubs, or, oh, no, we're gonna say upright shrubs.
With a mix of upright shrubs? Okay.
So those would be our intentions, but I think right now we're gonna make a recommendation to table this, and I'm thinking at least a couple of months.
So tabled, not continued.
Continued, I'm sorry, continue this to try to always get us to put some kind of set future date, we give it.
I do just because from notifications.
Should we notify you back when we're ready?
Yeah, you could place it on your inactive agenda. Don't you have an inactive agenda?
It expires after your year, doesn't it?
After a year.
Yeah, so put it on the inactive agenda.
So what's the actual?
At the applicant's request to seek approval for the suggested items from the power company.
That's not reasonably.
Say that one more time, just,
It's just going on the inactive agenda at
So-
at your request.
so we notify staff, we're ready to come back.
Yeah, then you can notify staff and they can pull it off the inactive agenda and let the commission know. There's no notification. I like to get a date certain because if there's notification requirements that were attached to the original authorization, then the public can track it.
Sure.
So, but you can put it on the inactive agenda and then you just gotta let them know, give them enough, you know, you gotta meet their standard
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
applying for an item.
Yeah.
Can't do it the day before a meeting.
No, no.
So I'll make a motion.
We'll be at the filing date, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to place this item on, at the applicant's request, place this item on the inactive agenda while the applicant seeks more information and contacts the power company, et cetera. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Right, I think I heard you say, Mr. Chairman, based on the direction you provided regarding fencing and shrubs.
Catch that, Susan? What I said there?
What was it?
They continued it, or put on the active agenda to give the applicant time to reach out to the power company based on their direction that they provided tonight, which will be articulated into the minutes.
Yeah.
That's gonna be 12 pages more.
I know.
There was one point when they were almost word for word, back when I started.
Yeah.
It was
We were close. We were close.
I was just born, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. All right, so we got a motion, we got a second. All in favor? Aye. So hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
It
discussion.
doesn't seem like we got anywhere, but hopefully.
Appreciate your time. Sorry for the delay, guys.
All right,
Yeah, sorry, yeah, we see it.
item number 8.
It's been a little 5 or more inches.
We have Copeland's and Valley Reserve, and as I've had to do for the last, when they've been coming in, I've got to recuse myself due to a professional relationship with the applicant. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott, Mr. Willenhurst, for running this portion.
Susan, you let the record state that he's gonna recuse himself?
Yes.
Okay. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. You guys can just, you know who you are, but just state your names and relationship for the record.
Chris Koblenz, Valley Reserve, I'm the developer.
Keith Filipkowski with Pulte Homes. We are the intended builder for the Valley Reserve development.
All right. I don't know if you guys want to give us just an overview, or if you want to let Mr. Franz and the rest of the reviewers kind of jump into their comments, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick, we had majority of our site plan and several things were approved March 17th. There were 4 remaining items: the entry sign, the location of the mailboxes, and architecture, and street trees in front of the houses. Those were the 4 items that were not approved according to the minutes from the March 17th meeting. So that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Mr. Franz, if you'd like to.
Sure. So Chris, can I ask you a question? So we never did vet through the construction agreement. I had it as a comment in my report, so I just wanted to make sure that does get addressed at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be here, but it does have to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, according to the minutes, that will be approved with the final site plans from Joe. Okay? We are working through that. I talked to Nino about, that, It's, you're talking about so this, construction agreement is signed, but there is a performance bond that will be tied to the credit, we're getting for the loan development. I talked to Nino about that.
How about the covenants or restrictions?
Those were turned in, the day of the last meeting. I had two bound, folders. There'll be a couple very minor, amendments to that, but, you know, they kind of based on some of our people, so.
And those were turned in when?
That would have been, if our meeting was on the 17th, it was either on the 16th or the 17th.
Okay, so, yeah,
Of March, sorry.
typically, the commission, reviews and approves those. That's why I raised it, because it hadn't been approved by them. I don't think it was approved by them.
No, they were emailed to the, city, and then I had two bound copies of them turned in, again, I think it was 16th or 17th of March.
And have they been approved?
To my knowledge, I have not had any, memos from.
Yeah, so I'd just say, I would recommend that just remain a stipulation, just to make sure they could be done administratively, just some sort of approval for your sake.
Yep.
So you have something that
No,
shows they're approved.
Agreed.
Yeah, okay, so, and then, there's just, a lot of the stuff's minor, but then you have the wetland issue. Do you have approval for the wetlands for the
We have
line?
the AJD for the wetlands, no, highway vehicle is still in process.
And you anticipate there won't be an issue with the sublots that are impacted by the wetlands?
There shouldn't be, no.
Okay. And if there is, then, it necessitates a design change, you'd have to come back here for approval.
Yeah, I mean, really, the Corps has given us jurisdictional approval.
Okay.
So we're waiting on a national permit for phase 2, just like a 0.03 acres
Okay.
of one of the sublots. It's about the size of this table. But that's the only one that, possibly could, maybe would shrink or something.
Okay. Yeah, again, just wanted to make sure it's out there.
Yeah.
So then, relative then to these other topics, landscaping, I was fine with the landscape species. I just felt, just need to reflect, performance standard, like size, spacing.
I have a couple minor notes on that, but we can read.
Sure. No, I think now's the time to talk through those.
I would make sure to specify species of elm, just make sure they're disease resistant, a good street tree, it can go a lot of different ways.
Okay.
And the same for the juniper, those come in all shapes and sizes, so I'm not really sure what the intent is. I'm assuming it's a lower juniper, just make sure it's one that doesn't get huge. Sea greens can just take over our whole yard, we don't want that. Then same with, everything else was okay. I think the viburnum in some of these are, it might be, again, pick a smaller species. You're just not gonna have a lot of space to grow those, in that small area. And otherwise, yeah, it was okay. I like the effort to, provide each unit with a pretty robust landscape.
Just clarification, you mentioned the juniper being a species that grows smaller in nature. What was the other species that you referenced, was making sure that it's a small?
Make sure, pick a species of viburnum.
Viburnum.
Yeah, that can fit.
Gotcha.
Tell an architect to pick a species.
Just go online.
So that was why I suggested, specific species need to be documented on your plan,
Yeah.
because there are issues with some, and some aren't just
Some
appropriate.
of these you just don't wanna leave open to interpretation, you get something, I don't know, are the owners selecting some of the material, or they pick their street tree too, or?
No, we will give them 4 or 3 options that they have to select.
Yeah, oh, okay, and they select from
These
the 3,
yeah.
that's what I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
If you wanna specify an elm, we can do that.
I always like, material.
That's what I had in front of my house. Pad replacement.
Uh-oh.
Wind.
Oh,
Yeah.
or you can put both. It just,
You're talking about the owners can pick the street tree too, or just which one of the
Well,
landscape?
we give 3 options, so, yeah.
For the street tree. then.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the owners will, expand their landscape and put some on the back, so.
oh, I know they will. That's, but for starters.
Yeah, yeah. We would have a minimum standard, so.
Yeah, I think that's great.
so outside of landscaping, then, the only other two issues then that remain for discussion, the signage and then the architecture. Maybe we should do signage first.
Do mailbox and signs first,
Oh, okay.
architecture last.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, the mailboxes and mailboxes, you get those game boxes there. You don't have a lot of places to put them, so it seemed reasonable to me.
So we met with Scott and Pam and discussed mailbox locations. And I know we came up with a location. I know, Scott, you were gonna think about it a little more, think about phase 2, where you want it, but at this point, we put it where we thought would work best.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna agree with that. I know we talked about it going there, and that's fine with me.
And in the pad, I have it as 5 by 10, which will hold 4 boxes of 16 or 18, I think it is. And then the cover would end up being 6 by 12, just like we have over at Spruce Hill in the first phase. And I had a picture of what that would look like with the mailboxes that I submitted to the committee. Any questions with either one of those?
Is that notated in the updated judge's location?
The one I submitted has it.
Oh, okay, it's going further, okay, sorry, I was earlier. It wasn't connected with the site plan, so now I see it, okay, we're good.
And signage wise, it'll be a masonry sign, stone, and metal letters. So then I had the requirements size wise for the columns and height. I think Brian had some setback requirements, so you wanted listed here.
Yeah, I just articulated what the code says, so I just gotta make sure you meet it. It's not that difficult, 5 feet, setback at least 5 feet from the right of way. Then there's sightline issues. And then, I don't know if you were gonna have any lighting. You can have ground lights directed at the sign message, and then you'd have landscape integrated. So typically, the plan would identify like what type of landscape, species, spacing.
That was approved the last committee meeting. I had a picture of, yeah, what was, what it looked like, and then the picture shows the boxwoods in front. Kind of like what we did over at Shepherd Preserve. Very similar. It's high enough that you can put the lettering above, the letters, as long as it's maintained by HOA.
Yeah, so they just, whatever they approve, they just need to sort of codify or attach it. Is, you're coming in phases for your approvals, so I do remember we saw that and talked about that last time, but typically that would be submitted with the sign plan. It's all integrated or part and parcel with, so when you look back at the meeting minutes, this was approved, and
Yeah.
this has this landscaping, these species, this spacing, as opposed to looking back at previous minutes to try to find, well, the spacing was approved with the species type at blank meeting, It's just all together that way. is
Yeah,
my
I
point.
think did I resubmit this? Yeah, it wasn't, I thought I did, but I brought it along with this.
Good thing you did,
Yeah.
Bill. So, yeah, just, it could be sorted together. I do think you guys talked about, and we're okay with the landscaping last time. So, and then you just need to document on your site plan the location.
Okay.
And then the last thing is architecture. Last time we talked, it was just like front elevations, so now sides and rears are provided. Most of those are optional. And I'm sure that many homeowners wanna spend more money and upgrade, but if they don't, the commission just needs to be aware that the elevations, both side and rear, especially the rear, could end up being very void of architectural elements if they're all optional.
Yeah, I think that, Keith is gonna talk on that, but, we met with Scott and Pam, and we had, an agreement on several
Yep.
things, so maybe you can.
Maybe I could just start from the top on the architecture, if that's okay. Just to rehash that, obviously last time we were here on, April 7th for the planning commission, the feedback we had from the architect consultant Pam, led us to believe that, there's confusion about which homes are being offered, what elevations were offered with those. And so we agreed to meet with her thereafter, which we did in person. We then submitted a new portfolio package to the city on the 25th of April based on that meeting. At the meeting and included in the package we submitted, we made great strides in terms of coming to an agreement about whatever ancillary things that may have been desired, whether they were coming from her as the architect, likely what the planning commission would want to see, what other city staff members would like to see. So in our portfolio booklet, we've got a list of like 20-some items that are texted out that aren't necessarily demonstrated on the architecture itself. For example, one of those line items would be garage drains. We can't very well demonstrate that in an architecture elevation, yet it's listed in the booklet. However, when we submitted that package, the feedback we got from Pam on the 13th of May did ask that while we've come to an arrangement about most things, there are a few things that she thought we ought to consult with the commission on this evening. And before going through those, I guess in the spirit of needing to understand where the planning commission sits on those topics, not having those, because we haven't discussed it yet, I'm unable to incorporate them into the booklet. So my request is that as we go through those items of discussion, that we proceed with the availability to get a conditional approval and finalize those things onto the booklet administratively. If that would be acceptable, it's something for you guys to think about as we go through tonight's discussion. But more specifically then, the items that she left to ask the commission about, one was, we had talked a lot in the past about incorporating a permanent set of stairs and landing onto the rear of the home, egress, rear slider door essentially, at the onset of the build. For various reasons, we went back and forth about that. Ultimately, our request on that line item is to give the benefit of the homeowner to install whatever size deck they want from the onset, and then conversely to ensure that they're not just leaving something in place like a railing and then not doing anything more with it. What I'd like to propose is that we mandate that the homeowner install permanent stairs and landing or decking within 12 months of their home purchase, all governed by the HOA and the CCRs. So it'd be a requirement placed on them. They could purchase a deck from Pulte if they want. We do offer an option for decks. Those are customized by The company we use, Classic Decks, they could be as extravagant or as minimal as they want in terms of, you know, whether it's a 3-foot landing and steps down or a 16-foot deck. That goes through its own permitting process individually, of course, to make sure it complies with all zoning restrictions. The point of the matter is that the homeowner will be required to install some sort of decking within 12 months of homeownership, as governed by the HOA.
Who enforces that?
The HOA.
So
Are
if
we
they,
HOA for the first year?
Yes, we'll be the HOA until the last home, until 100% rolled out.
So, I don't, my initial thought is I don't have an issue with that. The only question would be if, so you guys would be the ones that would have to enforce that then, correct? So before, and that would be then before, is the city required a final, like, closeout of the development or something like that? Is that how that would work?
Well, we could, it'll be the same as landscaping, you know, if somebody wants to move in the house and the driveway is not completed because of the weather or the landscaping, you know, we would issue a temporary CO, and we would give them like 6 months or something to install the landscaping or the driveway or whatever, needs to be done after that, so we could probably issue.
So is that something we would do? And I guess I'm just trying to get clarity on this so we make sure that there's no, because again, I think that's a very good idea, I do. I just want to make sure it doesn't become a muddy mess of what happens now. So I mean, I guess would, if you show up to do your final inspection and someone has nothing, then you would make it a condition of their final C of O, or I guess I should say, would you make it a condition of their final C of O that within 12 months they would have to have this and this done? Okay, that's fine. So as long as there's some kind of like a
Belt suspenders on it.
about, yeah, exactly. Like I'm fine with that. And if they show up to get their final C of O and they say we're getting our deck put on next week, well, problem solved.
The only question that I have, if after a year it doesn't get done,
Yeah.
are you guys gonna do it? Are you guys gonna do and charge me for it?
It would be, well, it would be the, yeah, it would be through the HOA, but yeah, the
Could we
HOA would have the authorization.
Could we have some drafted so that they have to do it and there will be a SAS?
100%, it'll be drafted, yeah, it'll be incorporated into the documents.
I guess what I'm asking is like, does that get tied to your performance bond that you have to put? I guess that's kind of what I was like getting at, is like, how does this
I
like,
see that as a separate entity.
that's what I thought too, but I wasn't sure. Again, I don't want it to become this big, as I'm
Yeah.
sure nobody does here, want it to become this big huge issue of like, well, somebody doesn't have it done, and then all of a sudden, who's holding the bag of holding them responsible for it? Is it the city, is it you guys, is it you? Like, who is it collectively, and have an agreement and an understanding of that from day one, and then there is no, I know what you ran into just recently with the fence or the chains and stuff like that, like, those became this, like, I guess that came to my mind, like, different issue, but like, how do you make sure that it doesn't become a problem where you're all of a sudden having to pick up the tab on that for something maybe you shouldn't have had to because.
Yeah, well, on a space, it's a requirement of the HOA, it'll be incorporated into the CCR, so it's a recorded document, it's a requirement via that. The belt and suspenders is the temporary occupancy, thereby giving leverage to the city. If the temporary occupancy is expired because it's non-compliant, then the city has the right to step in, right? So I mean, should be covered with both angles.
Yeah, so the problem that I've had is that, you know, you install these temporary steps, okay, sometimes they're not even treated lumber, there are no footers in there, and now all of a sudden, you know, a year later, the wood is decayed, this thing is just going up and down because there's no footers, and, you know, somebody can really get hurt on this.
I agree,
So
I think-
this is why, I think this is probably gonna,
Do you think this is a better solution to state it this way?
yeah, ideally, I would like to see 6 months, you know, to be honest, but
Well,
if the commission goes a year.
But that's, I mean, we would all love to see decks on sooner, but practically speaking, right, if you close a home in late fall and then you have all winter season, you get wet spring, we're waiting on a final grade before they put their deck in, and then we have conflicting timing. So we felt like 12 months was a reasonable time. You know, hopefully they buy a deck through our program.
What about 6 to 8 months? I mean, then that way it kind of gives that
12
buffer
months.
of like.
That's, how do you get past the idea of someone closes in the fall, go through a winter and it's wet spring? No different than this winter. I mean, then I don't wanna set it up for failure, that's.
No, I don't either. I guess I'm just trying to help Nino out here where he's like kind of trying to find that happy medium. You say, he says 6, you say 12.
See, at my age, I might retire, so they have to do it before I retire. Give me a break.
I mean, we just drop it. I think it's a great solution, I really do.
Let's go for
The
it.
timing
think it's
piece,
okay.
like, that to me,
One of the things with my build, the decks are always kind of an afterthought. You know.
you live there for a little while and.
They want to get through the build, and then they design their rear yard, and then they put their deck up. If you do it during construction, it's usually pretty simple. So.
No, I agree.
To the end of build, it's usually a little more complex. It looks a little nicer, nicer materials. Same thing with landscaping. You know, once they're in the home, they kind of know what they want to see. So.
Again, I think this is a great solution. I have no issues in terms of the timing. That's.
Yeah,
Are you amenable to the 12?
Okay with that.
You're good with 12? I'm fine with 12. Is everybody else? Okay.
Yeah.
And just, I also wanted to state this too before we kind of got into the weeds. When I did meet with Pulte and Mr. Coleman's and Ms. Schultz, I did make it very clear that anything I stated was not speaking on behalf of the commission.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
of my opinion, and that the commission may differ than what my thought was. So I just want to make that very clear that it was not, I made that very clear to them at the meeting, and I just want to make sure everyone else is aware of that, so.
One other clarification, so you made, if I heard the dates right, you guys talked around May 13th, but with
No.
the memo?
The feedback came back on May 13th.
Okay. So is that feedback the same as what we're looking at here dated May 8th from that meeting? Or, I'm just
No, the
wondering if
meeting
we're
was,
missing
the meeting
something.
was, our meeting was in, you guys were here in February,
We were here April 7th.
April 7th.
We met maybe a week after, or so, 2 weeks
A week or
after.
two after, and
We
they
submitted
provided
doc-
some additional details, and like when we met at their studio, we went through that. Then they went back from that meeting, took all the comments, or took what we discussed, and then they produced what we see here in front of us. So
Okay,
this is,
this May
this
8th
comment is
document from
after,
Pam
is after
got
that
it.
meeting,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, but she provided me a memo on the 13th of May. So whether your May 8th
I
dated
don't see
memorandum is the same as what I got, you guys would need to confirm that.
I
I've
don't
never
know,
seen it.
13. Did you receive a 13?
I did not.
Make sure I'm not just, Tyler review, Park review, 513.
You got it.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, May 14th, you're right, I'm sorry. Is that what you had? No, you have May
I'm
8th.
just going up.
May 8th, the date of her memo, like the memo that we received right here is dated May 8th. That's her official memo to us as a, went to the city to us.
I'm sorry, yes, May 8th.
Okay.
Okay.
I got an email on it.
You're good.
So I just want to clarify for the benefit of building commissioner then that we will update the CCRs to include that stipulation about the decks to be installed by an owner from 12 months from the date of their purchase or closing. And in those CCRs will specify that those are to be permanent structures, so any posting requires splitting.
And I'll have the law director look at that, so.
Sure. Yeah.
So deck, you're specifically requiring a deck as opposed to a patio? If they want steps down to a patio, that's unacceptable? I'm just
I think
asking.
it's a landing or with steps going
Yeah,
down.
we'll arrive at a language that satisfies the idea that they've got proper egress to grade out of the rear of their home, be it a 3-foot landing and stairs with footers, be it 2 set of steps, because it's not a walkout and it just requires so many steps to get to a landing.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I know the whole point is you don't have a, kind of a hillbilly, wood thing off the back of the house. Forever, right? And your code compliance.
Jason's getting around to it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's certainly, I didn't know that. My apologies.
I've only lived there 16 years, so.
I do think in the end this will promote nicer decks and it will prevent people from not taking action on something that they were just given at the time to build. So
But it could also be a patio. It doesn't have to be a deck, right?
It's the steps down to the
something.
grade.
Steps down to the
Permanent,
grade, whether
yes.
that be
We'll arrive at language in
I would
the
like to
record.
clarify though, because on a walkout site, if you go through the villas of Terramina,
There's no step down.
80% of them,
Yeah.
including the developer's own house, does not have steps down to
Yes.
grade.
Yeah.
I might
So
know someone who lives
usually
there.
there are a balcony, I don't know your parents.
Yeah.
But,
There's a step.
Yeah.
They really
But-
don't even need that.
So,
We'll articulate the language and work administratively to ensure it's collectively approved.
I know this was a big, that was a big thing that we had a discussion on, and I think, again, what you guys came up with is a very reasonable, acceptable solution. There was a lot of conversation around that at one point, so.
Okay. Another item that Pam had suggested we talked to the commission about was the idea of field painting doors and shutters, front doors and shutters on the home, or lack thereof rather. She suggested we ought to be powder coating and pre-painting doors and shutters. The response to that is that number one, the shutters come already the color that they are. There is no painting, so I didn't understand that, unless maybe she was assuming that they were wood shutters, but they're not. They're described out in our color collection booklet, they're vinyl, so that should be a non-issue. And otherwise, painting front doors in the field, she suggests it could be problematic for the builder. We don't see it as problematic. In fact, it's industry standard that one would paint the front door on the site. So we're respectfully asking that we're allowed the methods in which we, put the color on the front door allowed to be on the site.
Which comment was that?
Number 3.
What's that?
Number 3.
Oh, okay, got it.
Painting the door and shutters in the field will be problematic.
I have no issues with it being painted. I mean,
Just
somebody,
said wait till it's warm enough.
that becomes a maintenance issue. If they paint a door when it's 2
Right,
degrees
'cause then it's
outside
a
and it
net,
flakes
yeah.
off, they're gonna be called back to
Yeah.
paint again. So, I mean, it's.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I'm good there.
Any more discussion? The other three, maybe a little bit more discussion on. You already discussed the long expansive walls. When we met as a group, initially, one of the first things we discussed were this idea that long expansive walls, at the time we talked about it through the lens of, thinner millage siding has a tendency to look a little ripply, and long expansive walls are going to exacerbate that type of scenario. In the same conversation, we also discussed that additional windows on site elevations to break up siding is potentially a conflict of interest in terms of, windows have a tendency to melt siding. And so what we agreed to at the time, at least I thought, was the idea that in the spirit of those things discussed, that Pulte alternative to using material changes and makeup of the site elevation on a typical basis around the community, we would instead ensure that the siding that we offered in the community was of no less than a 0.42 millage, so a thicker gauge siding. So you'll see in our color collection booklet that we have proposed on the 25th, all of those sidings that are specified are at least 0.42, some go up to 0.45, but none of them are under that millage. Setting that aside now, we also talked about then the idea that there are certainly high exposure lots within the community. And in this particular community, we collectively agreed that there are 10 lots specifically that are high impact. We call them high visual impact to the street frontage. And those have been identified in the architecture booklet that we submitted on the 25th. So you feel free to review that if you don't recall. We did highlight those. And so on those particular lots, we determined those were denoted as the high impact elevation locations, whereby we would continue to improve on those set of elevations by way of introducing a three-dimensional bump out onto the facade, which we're demonstrating as in a typical scenario on the first floor. We've also agreed to ensure that there's at least 2 windows on the second floor. And we've also agreed to ensure that the trim boards on those high elevation lots receive the maintenance-free trim corner boards around the entire perimeter of the home. So those are the general characteristics of what we proposed based on discussions in person. We do find ourselves with Pam's latest memorandum of the 8th, sort of revisiting that to say, I think essentially what she's saying is, check, you did the high impact stuff, check, you're telling us you're putting in the higher millage siding, but even so, I'm going to circle back and ask the group, I want you still to apply now, even though you've now agreed to the higher millage siding, I want you to consider breaking up long expansive elevations typical across the community anyway. And so I'm respectfully asking that you consider, the narrative as I provided it and the way I see it as having happened, to honor that and allow for us to, again, apply the 3-dimensional bump out, trim material, and 2nd-story windows to high impact lots, and then allow us to use the high millage siding as the typical across the rest of the community to serve against the concern of rippling siding. Before commenting on that, I would ask you to also consider the fact that typical is the case that you're going to have more long expansive walls in a ranch scenario. They're typically deeper homes. You have a lot more plane on the wall to address on a ranch. And we have effectively removed the majority of our ranch plans from the lineup. In fact, we only have one ranch plan left. So with all that being said, that's where my request lies from the commission to give me feedback on.
Can a ranch plan be on one of the high impact lots?
Yes.
So I think one of the things that I'm looking at right here, and I'm wondering if this maybe is where she pulled this from, but the high impact elevation you do show, where you said you would have 2 windows on the 2nd floor, it still shows those as dashed. So
Yep.
are those intended to be?
We have corrected that. You just have not resubmitted the new package because we wanted to get all
That's,
this feedback.
I was looking,
first.
that came up to me when you said that, I'm like.
We were
those show
100%
dashed.
agreeable to that.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I think that, I mean, I think.
I can. I brought a copy for everyone if you want to look at it. It's up to you. I didn't want to confuse the matter, so I'm just trying to let you look at the information you do have.
On the typical elevations, I'm gonna stretch my memory here on this one. Did we discuss at least having a window on each elevation?
We are.
Again, maybe this is, with this being old, maybe you did highlight, maybe this does show at least one window.
Yes,
I guess.
we are providing 2 standard windows on the 2nd floor, not only on high impact lots, but everywhere in the community.
Okay, I'm personally good with that. I think that's good then, so I
but
mean.
on a ranch,
so-
in that long expanse,
well-
it could be, there would be at least 2 windows.
Yeah. There's no 2 stories on our ranch, obviously. First floor. we
Yeah.
have-
So on this elevation right here, and I guess this is what I was gonna bring up too, you would have at least 2 good sized windows here on this.
Yeah, our typical windows on the first floor are 3 foot wide by 6 foot tall, so we would apply that.
This one wouldn't count it. Are you counting that as one of your 2?
Well, that one could change, it's a bathroom window, so it
Right.
could change depending on the option.
Maybe it could be more like a transom or something.
Yeah, that's what they should.
Let's put it this way, if you
I
tell me it's not
guess I
acceptable,
just
we'll,
wanna-
we'll ensure there's 2 306, a minimum of 2 3060 windows on each side elevation throughout the community, irregardless of floor plan.
I'm good with that. For a ranch,
On
what
a
we're
ranch,
saying
it
is
would be first floor.
there would be
required
one window
bump
here.
out or anything on a ranch, would there?
On a high impact lot, we would do a
On high
3-dimensional
impact,
bump
that's
out,
what
we
we
would have
have
2
to.
windows.
And the bump out.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
and trim, and maintenance-free trim around the entire.
We talked about, because where the trim, just to give you a little bit of context or background on that was, so on the front face, they're using like a PVC, AZAC, a harder type trim. And then where the conversation kind of came up was, like, we talked about the high impact, we've got a front elevation here that's high impact, and this is a front high impact elevation. As you transition that corner, it would look weird, or just be weird even for their builders to like have to think like, oh wait, I need to transition this. So they said they agreed, they basically just brought it up, like, we'll just keep it all the same. High impact gets all the way around the same trim. There's no like aluminum or vinyl or whatever kind of trim. It's just, it's a good high impact one, and I thought that was good as well. So as far as your solution for the side elevations on a ranch, the 230 windows, I'm good with, plus whatever, if there's a transom window in there as well, that makes it kind of
But the
2.5.
transom might count as one of the two.
correct.
And the buyer knows when if they're buying one of those lots, that they are at minimum required to
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
those, okay.
Then you said that you would do, and then there's 2 windows on the second floor, no matter what elevation it is, correct?
On a 2-story building, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On community. Yep.
I think that's fine, thank you.
Okay. And then, let's maybe go through color issues next. You know, we had the on-site meeting, whereby we displayed all of the color samples that we intended to offer commensurate with our color collection booklet that was submitted. At that meeting, it was discussed that a white stone and a very dark charcoal looking stone was removed from the package. We did so and we resubmitted. Then the memorandum of May 8th comes from Pam, which states confusion, right? There's more colors, I don't know, these are orange, I don't agree. So I felt most comfortable coming here tonight asking if I could hand you the color collection booklet and we can go through and you can just tell me if there's any that are not agreeable to you. Because otherwise she hasn't given me the direction to say which brick colors, for example, are unacceptable. Now she does give me narrative that with the stone, she's explained those 2 stone samples there are unacceptable as they look orange, which I respectfully disagree with.
Disagree.
Did she see it in person?
We had all the samples out, she
There were
seemed to
2
not
that we
remember
immediately-
what.
The white one was one that I immediately said no to, because it's just this climate,
Yeah.
you put it against a landscaping bed and you put it anywhere, it's just gonna look horrible after
We were
probably
completely
9
agreeable.
year, and they were good with that. The black was the other one, it just seemed really dark. I mean, even if you used the lighter route, it would have just still been, so, looking at those 2 here, I have no issue. The only, like, I quickly went through this, and again, I know we looked at these in person, and these are now a print or a digital. The signature blend
I brought all the
and the
bricks, so.
Cedar Creek, in the photo, they seem a little yellowish or off, but the actual physical,
I brought the
color
samples
of
here,
those.
again,
Okay.
if you want to see them.
yeah, I'll just go back and look at them, or you can bring them up. doesn't matter.
Signature block, I would like you guys to benefit to see it too, so you guys could collectively
On
agree. if
here,
that's okay.
on here they look a little yellow, but
Coral blend.
physically in person, they could be completely different and fine. I mean, it all comes down to,
You said coral blend and signature blend?
I think it was all those like really, like I was good with the coral blend looked good. I think it was a country road, signature blend.
Bring them all up? I don't confuse it, just.
I can come over there, you don't have to bring them all up, it's okay.
These are the 2, these are, they're
They're not completely different than what they show on this one. I don't have an issue with one of those. They show, I mean, I can show you guys on my screen what they look like. Which one? What are those 2 really?
Even the orange kind of comes.
That's
out.
kind of where that's where,
But
so that's where I was like, that doesn't look
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There, that's completely different. Yeah, I honestly don't, and then what was the other one? That one's Country Road's good. Signature blend is good. I mean, I'm assuming if it's an ugly color, people aren't gonna choose it either. I know, that's true, I shouldn't. I think Cedar Creek is that one that?
Cedar Creek?
Yeah, that's the only, and again, I'm assuming it's just again the screen of this.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it's fine.
I don't get excited.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
The
gosh.
screen's different, the lighting,
Yeah.
it looks kind of green.
It does. That's why I was kinda, that's why I asked just to see those right now. I'm good.
Yep.
I have no issues with these colors. This is more like a brown. So, as he showed me in person, and this looks great. service to him when you look at it on the screen.
Maybe she didn't recall the,
Oh gosh, I mean, I didn't remember those,
Yeah.
so I can't.
no, I get it. I mean, that's why I brought them, to
Yeah,
make sure
no,
we're on the
thank
same
you.
page on it.
Yeah.
So I think effectively what you're telling me is all of the work samples that I've shown tonight, the board does not have any issues with those. Those color samples are commensurate with what's been provided already in our color collection booklet that the city has in their possession. So effectively, I think what we're saying is the color collection booklet submitted is acceptable. So,
I don't,
good summation.
I don't have any issues
Sounds
with it.
good, it's on the record, so.
Yeah, I got 'em. I looked through, those are the only ones that we just went through that popped out at me, but it's, again, I was looking at them on the screen, so thank you for bringing those.
Yeah, no problem.
Refresher.
And then last, consideration for the similarity code, or diversity code, however you wanna look at it. That is the geographic nature in which we're comparing any subject home and its proximity of homes. And then more specifically, the qualifiers associated with what distinguishes one home from the next as being different enough than the next. And so, by way of our exhibits we provided previously, along with our architecture booklet, we had a proposal for a certain set of qualifiers to distinguish and a certain set of proximity. The booklet we provided suggested that in terms of geographic comparison, that we contemplate, for any subject house being submitted, that we contemplate 2 on either side and the home most directly across the street. That's what we proposed. To go on, what I believe we did at Northwoods, just as an example or consideration through this discussion, what I believe we did at Northwoods was to say in terms of geographics, compare 3 on either side and 3 across the street, okay? The city code calls to compare 3 on either side and 5 across the street. So the first question is, of course, if you guys would accept the proposal the way we have it, but if that's not acceptable, meeting the middle and allowing us to consider what we did in Northwoods at 3 on either side and 3 across the street.
The
Is
city,
that correct that we can?
What's that?
Can we?
That's Mr. Friends.
That's gonna, if it's in the code.
So,
Approved as a
I think in a
Condition of
PUD,
PUD.
there's conditions that
I thought so too. Again,
Yeah.
I have no problem meeting in the middle. I don't wanna step out and all of a sudden put everybody in a position where we told you you didn't need a variance, and you did.
Well, we've executed this already in the case of Northwoods, but,
Do they need a variance? They wouldn't need to go through any kind of variance process for that? We have the right to do that because this is the PUD, based on my understanding of one.
What's the issue?
So, I'll let you explain. Go ahead.
we want to deviate from what the city ordinance of similarity code is as a function of this, new PUD zoning approval for this property. We would like, the ability to reconsider the similarity code, in terms of its proximity of homes being compared against. The code again reads 5 across the street, 3 on either side. We are asking for 2 on either side, 1 across the street.
And you're citing 116305. I'm assuming.
I don't have the ordinance number on my handout here, but
Pam has written.
Pam put it in her,
She did, wait,
did she cite a section?
she's citing 134102, there you go. Number 6 on her map.
134102.
Yes, that's 1341. So if it's just 1 across, you could have 2 houses almost like diagonal from each other there, right now. If I'm understanding what you're proposing?
well, the proposal here would suggest that this is your subject home. It's the home across the street closest, that overlaps most of the parcel you're comparing it to. And again, if that's not something that's acceptable, would you consider 3 across the street instead of just the 1?
I like the tree better, but I
I
don't
do
know if we
too.
have the authority to do that. That's what
We've already done it in Northwood, so if we're allowed to do it that way, I would say that's
Well, but
our recommendation.
were we wrong with Northwood?
I don't know,
Or did
that's
it
what I'm-
change since-
I'm waiting for him to.
But you didn't opine on that on Northwoods, the best of
I
my
don't know
knowledge.
if I was on that, but anyways.
I know,
I don't
Phil's
remember
turf,
that.
we have that everywhere, just like this one here, that's where I got it. Years ago, I considered it my guideline.
If you wanna keep going, we'll keep
Sure.
thumbs through that, I'm okay.
Yeah,
I think that
so-
way we're not holding on like
so-
one rule.
Yep, so the question about similarity then is twofold. One, I'm asking you to consider subject house being compared to either only 3 across the street or 1 across the street instead of the city ordinance of 5. That's the first request. The second part of that equation is, what are the qualifying items on a home that help you distinguish what makes it different, okay? So the ordinance will tell you things, A through E, right? First one being roof style of the proposed structure, you know, it is similar to the structure it resembles. That's a question you ask yourself when you look at similarity as the architect review or the zoning permit. There are 5 criteria, A through E. That's it. Once you exhaust those 5 things, you have no more to go to, right? So, when you think about this, if you're comparing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 homes on 5 criteria. So what I have proposed is a expanded set of requirements as qualifiers that you have to qualify by a measure of 3 line items instead of 2, but that there are different things you can choose from. So for example, I've restated certain things, right? So main roof styles, including full gable, full hip, Dutch hip, main roof pitch differences. We've expressly stated what constitutes difference in a roof and maintain that as one of the items. I go on to list 15, 16 different items here of things including, you know, full versus partial cornice returns, garage styles, including gallery style, Grand Harbor, 32 panel standard. If you think about a 2-car front facing garage, that's a good portion of real estate on the front elevation. I think things like that make a good, healthy impact to differences. Front porch sizes and shapes, column styles, relative location of quantity of windows, which again, is tying back to some of the things that are already stated in the code. Decorative features such as ornamental reverse gables, A-frames, brackets, louvers, different color schemes, different materials such as shake and vertical siding to distinguish differences. The lists are all in the booklet I provided. But again, I think just stepping back high level, we're saying expand the list of criteria to something that's practical that would cause us to have to comply with 3 of them instead of 2. In particular, you know, we did run into an issue at the end of Northwoods where
You've done the
can't
one
even,
house.
even with
When you dead end of the, you're gonna be pinned into it. You kind
Yeah,
of
that's
pinned into
like
a
you
corner at that
essentially-
point.
right.
yet at the same time, we have a set of approved plans and elevations, so that's all we have to work with.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So that was kind of where that's why I've been asking for this, trying to think practically, how do you maneuver through the community and still ensure that there's enough differences. So,
And what were you asking for, like, you said 5 or more of these, I can't think what you call it. 3
qualifying features.
qualified features.
You have to comply with at least 3 of the stated qualifying features of the list I provided.
My biggest thing would be not seeing like 3 beige homes like right in a row, right, like kind of. I know, I'm trying to think of how to like where.
It's hard to PED
I
because
know.
you have similarities.
Yeah.
Like those of Jeremy, again, I keep bringing that up, but, you know, we had 2 colors. Yeah, we had clay and we had sand, so every
It almost
house.
might make that, almost might make it easier when you only have, but I'm not saying go that route, but yeah, okay.
I mean, if we needed to put a stipulation with respect to color that puts some further limitation on it
Maybe
to
it
ensure
would
like,
be, maybe where I would say like, okay, let's say we come up with that that's acceptable, or even that, I guess I would say, like, where would we land between those two? Maybe what I would say is we just limit the colors of like where you can't have, like, if this house is, this is a better example, if this house is like tan, this one should be tan, this one should be tan, maybe like one of those should be tan, I don't know how one of them is, but like,
well, I mean,
where,
if this is the proximity, I would be willing to go as far as to say that you can have no one same color collection on any of the other homes in that network of consideration, period.
I was just even thinking like, is it color, is it like the I guess where I know would get harder would be the, like, stone or brick, like to say, but those all have varying colors too, so I don't even
Yeah.
think.
It has to be substantially different, right? I mean,
It does, that's where my mind goes to,
Yeah.
and I think the color, your main,
The color
Building.
So, like, I've got concern about maybe like the full cornice returns versus partial and the column shapes and sizes. Those don't seem to really pop as much for me as like you're talking about.
I think the color's a big thing for me, because I don't like when you see, I guess when you're trying, I guess I'll say this, when you're trying to create something like you did at Villages of Terravene, where you only had a couple of different color choices, that's fine.
it's intentional.
But where you have a larger group of houses that, you're trying to be intentional with creating something different. And then you have 3 beige homes right in a row, or 4 beige homes right in a row, and they had all these other color choices, that's what stuff like that looks, cause your eye's just gonna fixate on that one piece of it, not the other little details like you're saying. So if you're amenable to that, I'm fine with that, I think that's,
Okay.
like,
I
any,
like that too, as long as
I know.
determines if we can make that change.
So we would go on this similarity code with these lists of requirements, but then further to ensure that no one color scheme is within that, I can come up with the language.
Yeah.
But we can, that's the administrative part, where we can resubmit that to you and suggest the language that we're agreeable to in concept.
I would say no one color
Do you
scheme
flip the
falls.
layouts, like, is that, that might be another strategy?
You're kind of stuck with how it's engineered.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
But I mean,
home,
yeah.
yeah. It's like if you're going up a hill, you know, a developer always wants the driveway on the high side of the lot, because you want surface issues otherwise, you want to fill in stone. So yeah, we, you know, on a one-off scenario where the grade changes and the proximity, you may get lucky and that home's facing the other direction. That could be one, but you've gotta get 2 other
Too many of
qualified.
those here.
Just trying to
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
creatively.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I have kind of a big pet peeve with would be just that no vents come out the front of the house.
Yeah.
Or aren't an
Our-
impact full corner, like, well, that might be a little bit harder, but I guess that would be tough, but I've seen it too many times where there's like a vent coming out of stone and the thing sticks out like a sore thumb, like, why, like, what's
Yeah,
that?
they're painted, number one, that was a requirement that
Oh,
we
that's
signed
right,
up
they did
for,
say that,
except for the fireplace vent that's exempt, because it's
Yeah.
hot.
Right.
But yeah, we could also agree to all of our piping going out the back side of the back side of the roof.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think just that front, I've seen it too many times, and I'm like, what, like, I could have run that just a little bit differently, and it wouldn't have to come out over there.
Getting into really big houses, sometimes you have a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, there's exceptions, it's more of like when they just like, a big house, like you can be creative with that, or with some of the other ones, you see, they just, yeah.
So I think, so just to summarize then, it sounds like, and I'm not trying to put any words in anybody's mouth, I'm just restating what the proposal is, and I'm hoping the board will be agreeable that the similarity code that we proposed in the booklet submitted is acceptable by way of geographic consideration and qualifying, the minimum of 3 qualifying items within the list provided. However, in addition, that no one color scheme is the same within that review of proximity. Further, it needs to be, examined to ensure that it isn't just a, light brown, dark brown scenario, right? I mean, we want meaningful, substantial difference in color.
Yeah, I'm good. The only,
I'm
Brian's
good.
way in on this piece, like, how many that we need is, we need
Just
it.
on the legality of
Yes,
allowing
code
for
says one thing,
deviation
you're
to the
showing
ordinance because it's a PUD.
Well, I'm not sure you want my answer, but, I don't, you really don't have any jurisdiction over this entire conversation. You have chapter 1172 of your code, that's what you have to work with. Now, I think that that speaks to variations and such in architecture, materials and such, but there's no reference that I can find in this code, and I don't ever remember doing this in my 19 years. I didn't even know 1341 existed, because it's in the building code. You have no jurisdiction over the building code. Your entire jurisdiction is over the zoning code. So I don't know what answer to tell you other than, it's fine. You can do it as the 3 or 5, whatever you agree to, because there's nothing in here that says otherwise.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I thought you were going the other
Nothing
direction,
that
where you were
prohibits
gonna have to tell me I had to go get a variance if you want.
No, there is no variant. There's no administrative relief to that section of the code. It's a section of the code that's not your purview. It's the building code. And it's a local building code. I don't know where the administrative relief lies within that, but I think you have the right to talk about architecture and details and ornamentation and such, but this look-alike and 5 versus 2 versus 3 versus 1,
We can't.
there's nothing in here that says we are doing this. I don't see it.
So,
It wasn't done with Northwinds, to my knowledge. I was through that whole process and don't recall this ever. I think that was probably done administratively.
Well, the drawings came up to Pam, and Pam reviewed it and approved it and moved on. And I think we could do the same thing with this. I mean, you submit a drawing, submit a house, Pam will look at it, and if she thinks that there should be some changes, then there's gonna be a discussion, we'll make it work.
Yeah, I'm just trying to lay out the template for what are those qualifiers and what's the proximity, so it's not vague and ambiguous. We
So it
must have
sounds
some
like-
marching order in terms of what.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those things that's a discussion on the record, and it's kind of what the wishes of the city are, and hopefully the builder follows it if they wanna stay in everybody's good graces, even though there really isn't a way to enforce it. Is it a little too literal, or?
Well, I mean, I just, there's,
We would like approval, for
Right.
this by the committee, someone had submitted to Pam, there isn't this, oh, well, we want this.
And I,
And it
Yeah.
changes, we've already
Yeah.
experienced this where every memo, there's additional changes to what was the last memo.
and
Yeah.
she's expressly asked the commission to opine on this matter,
She's
so.
very clear in this letter.
well, probably because she's asking for something you don't wanna do it. So she's
Oh, I can-
asking the commission to think about it. All I'm telling you, you asked me to give you an opinion, in my brief looking at this, there's no jurisdiction of this commission to articulate approvals related to the building code. It's not your purview. You have purview for architecture under 1172. Unless I'm missing something and I'm qualifying, that's possible, there's no reference in the planning and zoning code to the building code as it relates to architecture. So any approval you give, I mean, that's fine, you can give it, but
I'm not sure how that even ties to the building code, I mean, setbacks and there's like a.
it doesn't. But it's in there. Again, it's in that 1341, it's in the local building code chapter. And I quickly went through that, there's no tie back to what the planning commission is ultimately responsible for, which is, or jurisdiction of, which is the planning and zoning code. Now, it's a very big document, I don't know it word for word, I know a lot of it, but I don't see anything that corresponds back to the building code for you to do what you're doing. You can give them guidance, but at the end of the day, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily mean a hell of beans because it's a building code item. It's not a planning commission item.
Who's looking at me?
You just, you're if you wanna look at what you can do, you can go under 1172, that's what your jurisdiction is. And this is
The
not a
zoning.
town center development, right? It's not a town center development. So it fall under 117202, applicable citywide standards. And in that, there's no correlation to 1341 of the building code.
But there is reference to him being able to pass judgment on architecture-related items in terms of requests and approvals.
Who?
And this is
Who's him?
the board. The planning
The
commission board.
planning commission can judge your application based on 117202.
Which involves architecture.
Yeah.
And this
But
involves
not
architecture.
similarity clauses and 5x2x3 or whatever we're talking about as it relates to what's in 1341. That's not in this section of the code.
Yeah, but it relates to architecture.
It does, but it's not, there's nothing that talks about, you're asking for an exemption from a specific requirement of 1341. They can't give you that. They just have no jurisdiction over that. It's a local building code thing. They can't.
Yeah.
They can give you guidance, I guess.
We're certain that can't be incorporated into the plat approval.
It's not in the PUD either. There's nothing in there that references back to 1341.
How do we arrive at
Yeah, I
a
mean-
scenario where there's certainty in what?
We're literally hundreds of units in this community
I don't blame
don't follow that code.
They don't follow what?
The
1342
5
or
units,
1341?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know where, again, I've 19 years, I've never looked at that section.
I don't want this to be something that takes away our ability to achieve a conditional approval tonight with the administrative work left to do. I really want consideration for the similarity. You've made the statement about what authority you have to do that. So it's an item that we need to research more perhaps as we come to a conclusion.
That's what I was just gonna ask, can we,
Maybe
how
the
can we
law
go
director
about in terms
finds
of an
something.
approval but not, trying to think how to say this, how can we? Yeah, I mean, I know we don't have the authority to.
You can, if you're comfortable saying, what is it that you want? Tell me again. 3 on one side
I
and
would
5
like
on the other?
consideration for the similarity code in 2 ways. One, the consideration for proximity of homes being judged against any subject home to include 2 homes on either side of the subject lot and 1 home across the street. In terms of qualifying measures, what constitutes homes as different, I would like the requirement to need to achieve 3 items instead of the code's listed 2, but using the criteria that I have listed in the proposed booklet.
So I don't think they can tell you the 2 versus 3, but it says the materials shall be compatible with and not in stark contrast to the materials used on adjacent structures. Colors, textures shall be appropriate for the size and scale of the proposed structure and shall be harmonious with adjacent structures. This is the language these guys have, and ladies have the authority to implement.
So,
So I think there's a way to,
I would say that because we've done it, here's my, I don't know, my thought on this, like, your qualifying factors, I have no issues with those, in addition to the one we talked about, the color. I think that since this example you're proposing with the connectivity, since that's not something that I know of, or at least right now that we've done in the city, I would feel more comfortable with going with what you had done just recently in, what was that other development? Northwoods. And use that as our,
Yeah.
use that right there.
3 on either side
It's
and
been
3
done,
across the street.
the precedence has been set, as opposed to creating another new precedence that we don't know.
yep. So we're fine to meet in the middle of that.
I know.
It sounds good.
It's-
So
I
somebody
know,
wanted to challenge that, it could hold.
that's something I mean, I don't think any of us can, to at least, I guess where I'm at is like trying to keep these guys moving forward with something, and if somebody wants to challenge it, like, I don't know how we,
Yeah.
even we just,
What body
maybe-
is gonna
maybe-
enforce that part of it.
I mean, maybe we just, the only comment I would say is like, just have the law director review it and say if he's okay with it, and make sure that, I'm, Mr. Commissioner, I'm assuming what we're kind of discussing, you're in theory okay with? I mean, do you have any issues, reserves with this?
Well, we already set a precedent.
I know, and that's kind of where, that's where I'm trying to like, I don't wanna vary from that precedent, which this would, based on what I know, unless you guys know of a development that is done it this way here in Macedonia, I feel more comfortable with that's what was done in Northwoods. I'm good with that. That precedence has been set. We're adding a few additional qualifying factors into this. So,
I would be okay going with this, and then for each unit, you know, it would be submitted for approval. If there is any tweaking or something, we agree to do that.
But that's a very broad statement, right? I mean, the whole point of it is to narrow down on the specifics of what the requirements are.
It's not
To say you agree in concept, but then if you wanna tweak it, you'll go ahead and tweak it.
it's not easy to be specific in something that is so.
Right, this is my best attempt.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's, we're just trying to get some, you know, not only for, it's not even, in some cases, it's not even a costing consideration. It's how do we set proper expectations with our buyers coming
I understand. So,
in.
here's a thought. What if, when you guys make a submittal for a home, I know it provides more work, but like, it basically just breaks it down, like, this new home sits next to this home, sits next to this home, and then on the opposite side of the street, it has these homes. The difference in this elevation from these is we've made the color
That's
blue, and we've done a hipped roof as opposed to a pitched roof, and we've done whatever that other third qualifying thing is, and you basically just list out how it's different, and
I think that's what he's.
That's what I'm proposing. I mean, well, it's the difference between who's doing the labor of providing the intel, right? Is the examiner reviewing it and justifying against the criteria, or are we providing a package that does that work for them to spell it out?
I think providing that package would lessen the possibility of somebody coming back, cause these deviations are somewhat minute in nature to an extent.
Yep.
And so when a reviewer is looking at this, they may not catch that third,
Yeah.
they may be looking for like that
Yeah.
needle in the haystack. What's your
And-
third deviation? You get a comment letter back stating that like, well, you didn't provide a third deviation, and you come back. Again, it avoids
Yeah.
that back and forth. If you know what your three differentiations are, I'd say I would just provide it immediately, and I think personally it avoids that
Yeah,
back and forth figuring it out.
we're amenable to that, and, you know, we're certainly had fully expectations, just like we did in Northwood. Every home we submit for permit goes under the review, and that's why we're trying to specify in this booklet as closely as we can, so it's as easy for everyone. Whether I list it out when I submit, which we're amenable to do, or not, at any point in time, if Pam's no longer here and there's somebody else reviewing it, they can go to this book and say, okay, Mystique floor plan, side elevation, it requires 2 windows, it's gotta have a floor drain in it, these are the criteria, they've listed those 2, looks like it's checking out, we're good. So yeah, we're happy to do as you suggest.
Does that help?
I think it's a great idea. You, just, you know, submit that to us, we'll review it, we'll be in communication, or we may even have a meeting and we'll get a result.
Yeah.
And maybe the first few might just be a little bit of like I don't know, I'm not part of that side of the equation. I'm just trying to make it easier for everybody that's on the other side of it.
Yeah. Pam's familiar with the process. I don't know how easy she thought it was, but she was involved in the Northwoods project, so.
Yeah, you know,
We didn't have any problems in
We-
Northwood, so.
We did, no, we didn't. Towards the end, it got very difficult to balance between homeowner expectations and qualifying the differences when we had limited product supply to work with. And that's the gap I'm trying to bridge here, setting expectations up front. What are the qualifiers? What's practical in terms of maneuvering through it when you're comparing against 11 homes? It's not very practical at some point. So it sounds like everybody's pretty agreeable to that. We are amenable to submitting what those differences are when we do a permit. You know, we'll track them.
I think it'll make,
Easiest way to put it, I mean, I'm open to suggestions.
I think the suggestion is great. It just like, you know, submit some to us, we'll look at it. Then we may set up a meeting, if there's any questions, and we'll discuss and we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, operating through communities with a preset of standards for qualifying differences and locations, they're different, is not new to us. We've done it everywhere, in places like Richfield, we've done it in places like Hudson, we've done it in places like Brecksville, we've done it in places like Pepper Pike, we've done it in places all over the city. So it's, for us, it's just the,
I think that's the view that you have done. You can just make it, the process on the reviewing side easier, and they're not trying to find that needle in the haystack.
We're
to figure out
happy
what
to
the
do that.
dimensions are. I think it's just, I personally think that would make the review go a little bit smoother.
for you guys.
I'm just trying to.
No, yeah,
I would think it would make it easier on your side of it too, because
Yeah.
then you're not gonna have a bunch of back and forth.
well, the reality is they have to know before they sell it anyway.
Right.
So, you know what I mean, they should have, once they have it up and running, they should be, and that's what we do, I mean, Aurora would do that. They have to know upfront. So that's fair, it's a fair ask.
In case some of these items that are here, the sump pump to be installed, I mean, if a sump pump is required because your cemetery is gonna be lower than the street and you can't do it by gravity, you can't drain by gravity, you're gonna need a sump pump. But otherwise, I don't expect you to put a sump pump in it just because it's written here. That doesn't make sense.
That's what I was asking Pam about.
I don't,
Yeah.
right, exactly. You know, HVAC and side of home to be screened landscaping,
Added, we put it in there.
you know, so, I mean, there's a few things here that we could do without.
Anything that I didn't discuss tonight,
Yeah.
we've assumed yes and incorporated it into our booklet.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's all listed right here, it's in the black and white, I mean, you know.
Can I have one of those, Keith?
Yeah, of course, I mean, we submitted it, or the new ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not approving this.
What?
You're not approving this,
Proving what?
this document.
No, we are approving
Yeah, so on the right side here, it lists, sump pumps to be installed as required per site drainage plan. Battery backups will be standard when finished basement is offered. No daylight drains allowed on site. Just like it said there. Exactly what Pam asked for.
Okay.
No, we've incorporated everything into the
That's what
booklet.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get this approved. Basically, it's everything we've gone over with both Scott and Pam. And then there's some additional items that were approved. Right? Is that-
Yeah, we're just, so we're just pending clarification on the similarity item, but everything else, if we didn't discuss it, so like, for example, you won't see in here that Pulte's putting permanent stairs to the rear of the homes, that's now an HOA requirement, that Pulte just so happens to govern, right? But it's not something that will be part of our build process unless they purchase a deck option from us. Otherwise, you know, in that case, our vendor will build the deck, but otherwise, they've got 12 months to install it, or the HOA is coming after them. And their occupancy will expire within 12 months from the date of close.
What's that?
I'm just going through the list here.
Oh.
I think we're good.
So are you looking to approve, what is that thing that you're looking at?
I'm looking at Pam's comments.
Oh. Pam's comments were constructed under and articulated under 1341 of the building code. It's not your purview. If you want to approve whatever you were submitted tonight, a look-alike similarity document with colors in the context of 1172-02, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that, but you cannot give a deviation to 1341 as a planning commission.
1341 is limited to similarity, context of similarity.
13, whatever this similarity, 3 garages on one side of the road, that's
Yeah.
in that 1341, they have no jurisdiction over that.
Right, but 1341 discusses similarity as a broad, categorically it discusses similarity and only similarity. It doesn't discuss the minutia of what Pam has put in her memo in terms of, 1341 is not going to talk about garage drains, for example.
Okay. Yeah, garage drains are a building code issue. This commission wouldn't talk about garage drains either. We look
But it's on
at,
the-
exterior elevations, period.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I'm just telling you, that's what they look at.
With the architect reviewers, the consultant for the city is requiring me to
And
put.
she's incorrect. I apologize.
Yeah, okay.
It's incorrect to come to this board.
Yeah.
And I stand by that. Now, with that said, if they want to, in the context of 1172, approve what you submitted, and that it generally satisfies her request, I think that's probably fine. But they cannot grant a variance or exception to something they don't have purview
Or
over.
written state code otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at, it's up to Article 10 of the charter online, it doesn't give that authority either, so I could be completely wrong, but I don't think I am.
So we as a board, let me make sure I can understand this correctly, are approving what has been submitted and Pam's comments based on and only on the context of 1172-02.
A 1 through 10.
Be specific.
And there's language in there that talks about colors and textures and appropriateness of materials adjacent. So you've done a good job of articulating that.
Yeah.
And if you're satisfied by that, under 1172-02, you're recommending approval.
What about where we got into the additional windows and things like that?
Well, I think that that's generally acceptable under 1172.
Okay.
I mean, it
Because I'm
talks
gonna
about
try to put
materials
together a
and-
motion here that like teases everybody, but doesn't put anybody in a position that's like, oh crap, what did we just do? Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I've made notes all over my paper, so I'm trying to make sure I've got everything covered. Okay, so I can make sure I can speak to this appropriately. We have agreed to that. No, not yet. I'm gonna go over. No, I don't. What I wanna do is just go over generally like what we discussed, what we agreed upon, and then I'll make the motion, make sure I didn't miss anything. What's that?
You are writing a draft.
I'm writing a draft of this memo, so.
And Mr. Chair, just before you do,
Yes, sir.
maybe you could also separate out your approval with the other issues. There were other issues that we came to talk about tonight, the
Yes.
signage.
So this would be for just strictly architecture.
I would, just to be very careful.
Okay, I'm good with that. Okay, so in the context of architecture for these homes, we'll start with that, based on the context of 1172-02, we approve items A 1 through 10 with the additional items noted as such, that the homeowner must install a deck or landing within 12 months. This will be tied to not only their occupancy permit, but also to the homeowners association. Yes.
Deck, landing, or stairs to grade.
That's fine, that's why I just wanna go through this right now, so we
Yep.
don't have to,
Say permanent stairs.
yes, thank you. I think I put that on a different page. Okay, the next thing that I had was the windows, which this might need a little bit more detail, but we had discussed that on any and all elevations, whether it be a single story or a two-story home, they will all have at a minimum 2 windows. That does not include a clear story, or I guess I'm just gonna call it a clear story window.
Transom.
Transom.
Did you include the high, what'd you call it, millage, the vinyl, or?
That is written in here and is part of their,
Okay.
that I did, that, and I'm gonna also wrap it up with that, it would, I mean, yeah, you know, we'll just add it in, and that way it's clear. The,
He proposed .42.
.42, yep, it's written, minimum of .42 vinyl siding. Where we had those high impact elevations. Are you going to have more than 2? You're having a minimum of 2 windows up top.
We're having a minimum of 2 windows.
Up top, and then 1 lower too, like this depicts, I guess, because I know we had talked about, like, those 2 would really technically be solid.
Yes.
That one is solid already, so you would have a minimum of
3 windows.
3 windows on a high impact elevation plus the bump out,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
And you guys are agreeable to, I'm gonna run through these because we didn't actually talk, I think we talked about some of them, but Pam had noted that grade brick should be listed as full brick.
That's a terminology issue she's not understanding. So grade brick is the idea that below the sill plate of the first floor and the grade, the dirt,
Right.
that you will not have exposed brick, right? So grade brick is just putting full queen size bricks
Got it,
in that cavity,
Yeah.
grade to the underside of the first floor plate,
got it.
so that there's no exposed foundation.
Okay, so we're just gonna say that there's no exposed foundation.
Yeah, her concern was just that we're not using a lick and stick brick.
Gotcha. So we're just gonna say that no exposed foundation. 2-foot returns on outside corners of any stone and or brick.
Yep.
Engineered products to be used on all front elevations and on all elevations of any home, we talked about that. Full or partial cornice returns on all gable ends. 10-inch header trim above all doors, garage doors that is, sorry. If garage is insulated, the garage door should be insulated to match. Coach light drawings to be approved before installation. Permanent landing, we've talked about that one, I'm gonna go over that again.
Supply-
Garage interior doors to be fully drywalled and fire taped.
Yep.
18-foot wide minimum driveway, standard is 20 foot as an option.
Yep.
AC units on the side of homes must be screened with landscaping.
Yep.
All exterior vents to be painted, we talked about that.
Yep.
Sump pumps. I don't know how you want me to.
Some pumps to be installed as required per site drainage
That's fine.
plan. Battery backups will be standard when finished basement is offered.
Okay, you are okay with all those, okay,
They're
perfect.
all listed in the new booklet.
That's fine.
And that, just to, I'm sorry, that's subject to building code requirements, just to be clear.
Then I'm gonna just strike
It's
this.
not a planning and zoning.
I'm gonna strike it
issue.
from here, and then that way
Just
it
as-
doesn't, that's fine. Each home must have a covered front entry.
Yep.
You guys are amenable to all this, okay,
Yep.
so when I go through and read these, I will basically say, label. I will, basically the ones we struck or modified, I will basically say that the ones that we got rid of.
Okay.
And then that way, which was only the sum of one.
Right.
Okay. I'm gonna try to make a motion here for the architecture only portion of this approval. So in the context of 117202, we approve items A1 through 10. In addition to Pam's comments with that were listed as all items listed on the community architectural requirements should be listed on this document with the following added. The item regarding grade brick should be listed as full brick. We've modified that to be no exposed foundation. The item pertaining to permanent landing will read as such. Homeowner must install a permanent deck, landing, or stairs to grade within 12 months of receiving occupancy. If this does not occur, the occupancy permit will be reevaluated, and the HOA will be responsible to work with the homeowner to make this requirement whole. This will also be reflected in the CCRs that will be supplied to the city for review. The other item that we've added was that all vents will go out the side or rear. None on the front elevations.
None on what?
On front elevations.
Okay.
The item regarding sump pumps has been removed. And in regards to windows, all elevations will have a minimum of 2 windows. This does not include clear story or transom windows. And on high impact elevations, there will be a minimum of 2 high windows, 1 low, and a bump out. Yes, sorry, and the addition was in regards to ranches. There will be a minimum of 3 windows, no bump out, only on high. 3 windows, and that again does not include transom or clear story windows.
Transom or what?
Clear story,
Okay.
everybody refers to them as something different.
But if I wanted 2 by 2, like say I wanted to put two windows like in a family room, so they're up high, so that we put TVs and stuff underneath. But the 2 foot by 2 foot will be different than like a transom, like a 1 foot by 4 foot long window. You follow me?
I do.
So I would prefer if you just said transom. Our intent would be to do 3060 windows, but to the extent furniture got in the way, I think 2020 windows as a bigger story might be acceptable, but not transoms. For sure. Again, transom window is is like 1 foot tall by like 2 foot wide, very thin narrow window that serves just the point of providing light into a shower, for example. That would be unacceptable to use as an in any instance.
In any instance.
transom is not an accepted.
Transom would be allowed, is what you're saying, on ranches only?
No, transoms are allowed anywhere, they just don't qualify as one of the 3 windows.
Anybody have anything else to add? Did I misinterpret or read something? Mr. Franz, did I?
No, it sounded, it sounded like a good articulation of Pam's memo, to the extent that anything on the inside impacts the exterior elevation, you're covering that. And you're not covering things that are on the inside that doesn't, or do not impact the exterior elevation. You have the jurisdiction to do that.
Any further comments?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So then we have to add three items.
You can deal with the actual items that you,
Yeah, it's going back to see what
Yeah.
else is
Entry sign.
See the location.
What is it, the sign and,
Mailbox location,
Sign, mailbox,
yeah, that's it.
and street trees.
Good for it.
Bless you.
okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the other items that pertain to the entry sign. And with that entry sign, I would just make the motion that they also resubmit. It was prior submitted and approved by the board, but they submit the landscaping plan for record as a whole with the sign pack, with the entry sign. So it's all one piece. The mailbox location and, I missed something? The mailbox location and, style is acceptable. And in regards to street trees, there were a few comments on those.
Just pick a species.
Yeah,
For elm. This
Spe-
is resistance.
Yeah, pick a species of elm, juniper, and viburnums.
Yes,
That would all be a smaller species.
yeah, compact. Well, the,
You got it. You got it.
elm should be disease resistant, appropriate for street tree use. And then viburnum and juniper need to be compact varieties.
I said what Chris said.
Yeah,
Sorry.
oh, we're going on the video at this point.
Oh, I figured we were, it's not right, all this stuff.
And then I would also like to just make a motion as far as any outstanding comments from Mr. Franz be addressed by the applicant. And that pertains to the CCRs outstanding being final reviewed and approved, the ADJ approving the wetlands, and if any changes required, would require a reapproval of the site plan. Has the performance bond as well needs to be included in this, so Mr. Friend's items should all be addressed and responded to.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Mr. Franz's comments that were supplied need to be addressed and responded to. The only change that I made to that would be that if the wetlands do require any change to the site plan, it would require reapproval by the board. Mr. Franz,
you just need a second.
and his second.
Oh, I'll second.
All those in favor?
If I may,
Yes, sir.
just, maybe any substantive change, there may be a change.
Sure.
With the
I was
wetlands
trying to
that
think.
doesn't really need to come back here,
Yeah.
so any to save you some time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any substantive
got
changes.
jurisdictional
Yeah,
approval.
they're good.
I actually got the final, I think, letter yesterday or Friday, so, you know, it's just, I'll have you get a permit moving forward in that 90-day period, so.
That way it doesn't have to come back here.
Yeah, that's fine. If it's, if
Minuscule.
any minor changes, it's fine, so,
Non-substantive.
non-substance. Did I hear a second? All those in favor? Aye.
I'd just like to thank Scott for meeting with us and all the work that you done. So it was kind of that day was it was a little whirlwind. And we did appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I echo those comments. It was nice to do that at your own time, and it was very helpful in the process too.
Sorry, I threw a monkey wrench in it.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you as well.
Thanks, Bryce.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Thank you guys too. I'd like to invite Mr. Westbrooks to come back and rejoin our meeting at this time.
May I help you do that?
Sure.
It's too late, you guys need to come back tomorrow.
The rule is last applicant on the agenda brings the pizza.
Right? They said that this is like,
I'm gonna try, buddy.
I just complained about that because I was running out of battery. Down 25%. Remember what you're here for?
where we at? That's how it's getting close to my bedtime.
Yeah, just to kind of save time, yeah, I think, but go ahead, just.
Sean Thompson, Evening Architects. Chris Posey, they're running landscape supplies.
Alex Kelly, TM Architect.
So why don't we just jump right into Brian's comments? I know you guys will have some responses to some of them, and I've got some thoughts, and I'm sure everybody else is, just to keep it.
Yeah, I think these are all down to little things at this point, so.
I think so.
So the first one was the western red cedar, we can pull that up. We don't have I didn't remember the comment about them being 8 feet tall, but I don't think that's, yeah.
They grow at 2 foot a year, so if you put them in at 5 foot next year, they're gonna be 7 foot. I didn't really think that was a big deal. They're gonna go high at 8 foot, I'm gonna cut them off anyways, because they start the snow open, the snow load opens them up, the deer eat them up, so I don't know why we're discussing 5 to 8 foot red western cedars.
All right, well, calm down a little bit here.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay, so let's take a step back. I was gonna have Mr. France go through his comments, because this is kind of no context to just jumping into the response, so.
Okay.
Mr. France, you wanna start going through those? And
Sure, that was the first item, was increasing the height of the western red cedar. The second one related to the treatment of the bins. I do recognize we talked about the bins last time. I didn't go back and look at the video, but I didn't recall approving switchgrass. I had suggested it be more year-round, dense vegetation, something like arborvitae or spruce trees. But that's where that comment came from. And then just pretty simple, site lighting's minor, just you have to just make sure that at the property lines you don't exceed that half-a-foot candle. I do think the commission has generally accepted the architecture, but just want for the record, so the applicant has that you accept the architecture as proposed, because there is a specific prohibition on metal buildings, but I think you've come to a kind of a compromise with some brick and metal. Dumpster location. So I do think that last time we talked about the walls off of the storage bins being used. There was a suggestion in this proposal to have I think it's, metal gate with vinyl slats, and I just suggested that be board on board or whatever you use to match the building typically is what the commission allows, but we've also allowed board on board, so I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I don't think it should be the metal slats with, or the vinyl and the metal gate. And then detention pond just needs to be finalized and approved by the city engineer. So I don't think there's any showstoppers. You know, the difference between 5 and 8 feet, it just initially like that a little, more impact initially, but ultimately whatever the commission wants to do.
The biggest thing I want you guys to understand, we provided this time, so everybody could see where the frustration lies. Everybody was looking at it from an aerial view and not looking to see how screened this property really is. So I think this is an important thing to omit a lot of those things that we're talking about in the back end. Sean took his time and energy to show you different vantage points so that you can see that the property is screened as it is right now. From an overhead view, you cannot see that. This is what it looks like today, right now. You cannot see that property unless you literally view it head on. From the west, you can't see it. We sit down lower. From the east, you can't see it. The neighbor has all the spruces, all the pines. So that's where the frustration comes from in those situations. I would hope that you guys would take at least a minute and look at this, what he laid out, so you could physically see how screened. Unless you're in front of that property directly, you can't see anything from the east or the west.
And I think we understand it, and this, you know, these pictures are good. I think the point of that all was none of it's on your property that's protecting it. And whether you think nothing can happen at a property or you truly don't think anything will, things can happen, whether it's wetlands or it's a pond or it's whatever. That's where the requirement comes. It's supposed to be your own stream. So that's I think, you know, we're trying to, we all recognize this, so I don't think we've gotten backed off of the initial, landscape the heck out of it, both sides going down, you know, we're gonna, you know. But there is, there is a requirement to do it, you know, so it's not just even something we could just say, I completely forget about.
No.
I think what we talked about last time was, you know, the mounding and putting some stuff on the hill. I did go back and rewatch. It was torturous, you know. We rewatched the last a portion of the 2 meetings ago that you were there, and then the last time you were here. I honestly think this is what you kind of show is what we talked about for the most part. I know Brian's not totally sold on the switchgrass. I was curious, looking at this, are you actually in cut here? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if I realized that
So
before.
this was kind of the plan, but it wasn't illustrated, so we cut this section through there to show a little bit more of the approach. So, you know, these bin blocks, we're gonna stack them 8, maybe 10 feet tall, but we're generally 8 feet tall. On this side, they're gonna be buried about 4 feet in the ground in this corner, and that'll let this be a little bit flatter. And then on this side, we were gonna actually mount the earth up again. So the bin blocks, we believe, do the screening. So then the question was, well, we don't wanna have just 100 feet of ugly bin blocks. So the switchgrass was more of an effort to soften the screening so it wasn't just this big harsh concrete wall. And on the neighbor's property, he's got spruces back to here, and then it changes, it's deciduous trees here, so you would actually be able to see some grasses that would be able to grow at the base of those trees. And again, we're trying to, these ones you will probably never see unless something disastrous happens here, but again, the switchgrass is more for to soften the edge. The bin blocks technically screen the materials in the outdoor storage.
Now, what do you guys think about that issue? Are you thinking something like this is?
I think it makes a big difference knowing that.
Yeah, it does. I think it's that cut and drop down. I think helps.
And then you essentially get the same kind of look over here, but you're in to me, considering all the stuff that's on those pictures, it makes it easier for me to be okay with this. You're not fully screening the heck out of it. If something does come in here and blows it all away, you're still gonna see some stuff, but you've made some attempt, and I'm hoping, and I'm kind of with you that I don't think something's gonna happen back there, but crazier things have happened, and the right money can do anything.
They
Throw
have
enough
to
money
actually
at it.
remove their detention pond.
Yeah.
You guys have to approve the moving of their detention pond, and you'd have to reroute the stream that runs between the two properties. So if somebody has that much money,
And
God bless them, I'll put whatever streams back up you want.
People-
Holy cow.
people do some crazy
Seriously.
stuff. I mean, yeah, if somebody comes through that kind of money, sell your spot too. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
that might help what you want, right.
but crazy stuff happens. You know, I don't know. But I mean, to me, I'm okay with this. I don't know with the rest of it. If we just want to kind of try and pick off some of these.
Our biggest thing, just to reiterate, over here, the canopies, you got evergreens down in here, and then the canopies of all the deciduous trees are here. So you're somewhat limited on that side, and that's why I wanted to take
Something that could grow.
Right, you're really not gonna get anything that's gonna really go crazy. Again, the frustration is you're covered. So whether we put 5 foot or 8 foot in here, they're not gonna do anything. I mean, they're not, and I'm gonna cut them off at 8 feet, because if not, they snow load in the winter, they spread open and they split apart. So once you get past really, honestly, a 6 foot harbor of any type, if you're not burlap wrapping them every winter and maintenance the heck out of them, you see them snow load open, that's what they call it, they snow load. They open up, they split, and they're done.
Chris, you got any thoughts on any of this? The 5 foot versus 8 foot? Whatever they
No,
are.
I mean, they grow pretty quickly anyway. They really do, 4 to 6 inches a year and out quite a bit. So, I mean, and that's a good point about the snow load. A lot of times when we put in material and it's a little younger, it does have a better chance of thriving in the environment. So,
So you don't necessarily see a problem with it, you'd be okay, it's gonna grow quicker, maybe it'll have a better chance of
yeah,
surviving.
what they've shown us, the sight lines, I think.
Anybody else have any strong opinion? So where were we? So
The dumpster
I guess,
here.
yeah, the dumpster here, I know right now you've got, what, board on board back here, you got the chain link with the slats. I think what we talked about in the meeting after I went back and looked at it, is using the building and the wall as the sides. We did talk about possibly, using the fence back there, board on board. The front, we're really against the gate, the metal with the slats. Could you do board on board in the front? Would you guys be okay with that?
Yeah.
You'll have to see it to them, but.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we didn't think it was that big of a deal.
Yeah.
We would have seen it.
And we just got a pretty strong thing about that, those slats.
I mean,
So
it's really that
if
much
you could make,
bothersome, there's a 14-foot door, I'll put everyone's right inside the building and be done with it all.
We'll take some pictures and send it to them.
I think if you did wood gate type things, across the front instead of the metal, we'd be okay with everything else. So that seems like, use the building and the wall,
Yeah.
wood.
Okay.
We're getting an updated lighting selection, so we.
Okay, so lighting won't be a problem.
If you want to do an administrative approval on
Yeah.
lighting plan, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think so. So one we talked about, leave it with the 5 foot. Two is the switchgrass stuff we've kind of talked about. The lighting, that's something new, and they can look at that administratively. Building architecture. Yeah, we had to take a whole big swing, different direction this last time. From what I could understand, this seems like what we asked them to do.
Mr. Thompson and I had a conversation about this, and I was fine with it, and it looks like one thing we didn't talk about, and if you just want to confirm, you got rid of the green band around the outside, correct? Because we have one that's so close. Okay.
Yeah, sorry,
And
it's a
I
little bit
think-
better color rendering, so the only place that we're keeping the green is the canopies and the coping of the office.
Yep. I was
There's no green on the
Yeah.
other 2 stories.
I think it helps soften it
Guys
up a
okay with
little
that?
bit. And then the green awnings, I didn't have a problem with them above the doors.
metal, correct? We can do those metal, steel metal, that's what.
They should be metal,
Okay.
yes.
That's what I meant.
We would prefer not fabric, we
No.
would actually, we would say we would prefer, we don't want
Okay.
fabric offerings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it looks really nice, thank you.
So the dumpster, I think we're good with the one on board gate,
Yeah.
that's not an issue. And I do have a more up-to-date, we're nearly finished with the civil, the pond design. It has not changed or impacted the site in any substantial way, it hasn't moved the building or anything of that sort.
Okay.
But that will obviously be submitted in finals.
Did you have anything, Bill?
No, I really don't have anything. I guess, we're just awaiting, final construction plans, and like you say, the associated stormwater management report for our review. We'll review that administratively.
Okay. Fire, you know, nothing good. Susan, anything?
We got a long day ahead of her tomorrow.
So I think that hits the big thing. So I mean, I think you got to make another submission that'll correct, that'll show the changes, the trash enclosure. It'll show your lighting, your new fixture, whatever, and something that's visible. Are those the only two little things that we need to have looked at administratively?
There's one plant, I think, you're not gonna find that lily, that's a subtropical plant, so I would just replace it with phaloids.
Okay.
Fine.
We can see the condition.
Yeah. So if you get, yep. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll make a motion for final plan approval with administrative review of revisions to the trash enclosure as discussed, administrative review of a revised lighting plan, and one plant substitution to daylily.
You might have done pipe doors.
And those, and, I guess, yeah, I guess, yeah, and then to mention, if the detention plan to be reviewed administratively, but if it, final design impacts the site plan, we'll need to see it again. So if it comes back and it's gotta be twice the size and it's hitting, you're moving stuff around, you gotta bring it. Yeah, I don't think so.
Twice the size I will not iron back.
I guess, and I would add one thing to that, if for some reason the storage bins would ever be taken away, you decide not to do that anymore, you'd have to finish the enclosure for the trash. Or leave, somehow accommodate that before signing.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye. I knew if we just waited you out till 10.
Yeah. Almost had you come up and just say, motion to approve. No, you couldn't do that. That's what else is on the agenda next time.
Thank you for waiting so long.
Yeah.
All right, make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.